Because I put it on, I'm like, that is nice. I remember I quit wearing this because it was so big on me.
See, I need to go down instead of mine.
Not so much.
And you prefer it over this, whatever?
It still links the same way. Yeah. I still got a page in that, but
You can do notes and stuff
yeah, really easily.
more easily.
Like, you can write anything on here, and then it saves it on the PDF, or you can highlight, go back, and it
Or
saves
you
it.
can undo it.
And it saves it in my own Dropbox. And everything I've marked with my email. Yeah, that one might do it too. It just doesn't seem as
Right. User friendly.
as user-friendly. Jake, you're planning on the opening?
Yes.
See him out. He's coming out of
I used to see him out west, like
Really?
by our State Center before all the development.
Yeah.
I used to see him. Many houses now.
Ran them all out.
they're up at my house now.
We ran them east.
Exactly.
Like, they approve these chickens.
Yeah.
You don't need to approve them up there.
Yeah. They won't last long.
No. I mean, give them a week.
Really? Really?
These foxes,
Disappeared. Delicious chickens.
they can get into anything, and they don't just eat one crab.
All right, Maria, you ready?
They can take 2 or 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started with our city council meeting this evening. The rear ones get turned off sometimes. We'll go ahead and get started with our city council meeting this evening. We appreciate all of you in attendance. We do have, to begin our meeting this evening, we'll have an opening provided by Councilmember Jake Garn, after which Riley from Troop 518 will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we bow our heads in humility before this day in gratefulness for our many blessings, for this wonderful community in which we live, and the favorable circumstances that we live in, and also the weather that we have been receiving this year to end the drought. And as we consider very important issues this evening, we ask that we might receive thy guidance, that as we look at these important decisions, balancing the costs with the benefits that impact really the lives of every Kaysville resident, their financial security and also their physical security, that we will be able to balance these interests and come to decisions that will benefit all the people of Kaysville. And as we pray for these things and ask that thou would bless our community, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
May the audience please rise. Join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may now be seated.
Great job, Riley, and thank you, Councilmember Garn, as well, for providing us an opening. Before we jump into the agenda this evening, we'd just like to let you know we do have agendas available on the wall. Over here to your left, if you'd like to grab one and check off as we move through the agenda this evening. We'll begin with introductions. My name is Steve Hyatt, and I serve as the mayor of Kaysville City.
Jake Garn, City Council.
Dave Adams.
Susan Lee, City Council.
Chris Snell, City Council.
Larry Page, City Council.
Shane Scott, City Manager.
Maria Devereaux, City Recorder.
Andy Thompson, Engineer.
Thank you very much. Before we jump to the next agenda item, just one thing I'd like to point out. Once a quarter, we just reminded as we were sitting here, we have lunch with the mayor with the elementary kids, and we invite one from each grade from all of our schools and have a pretty packed room in here and have representatives from each of our city departments come and say a few words to the kids. And I'm reminded as we have some great visitors that are with us tonight, I usually always will tell the story that a few years back on Thanksgiving, I was sitting with my family at dinner, and I became aware of a structure fire, a house fire. And I thought, man, what terrible timing. And I mentioned to my wife, I said, I'm going to just step out for a minute. And I went down to where this was at. It was in a trailer house on the north end of town. But there we had all of our firefighters who had essentially left on their Thanksgiving day, during the middle of their Thanksgiving dinner, to respond to this request for help. And we have coming up after Call of the Public fire department discussion, but especially for you scouts, that anytime we can have the opportunity to explain and express to you how important it is that we support these wonderful men and women, not only in our fire department, our police department, but we just happen to have a room full of these heroes with us tonight. So I think it would be appropriate to ask them to stand so we can recognize them and thank them for their service. We don't get the opportunity to say it enough, but genuinely we appreciate all that you do, and there's a lot that many will never know about of the sacrifices you make, and especially to your families who share you with our community. Thank you very, very, very much for your service. The next on our agenda is call to the public. This is the time in the City Council meeting when we open the microphone to any of you in attendance that would like to address the City Council. On tonight's agenda items, we don't have any public hearings scheduled, so if you'd like to address the City Council regarding one of tonight's agenda items, this would be your opportunity to do so. Oftentimes in the past, we've tried to remain as accommodating as possible and allow folks the opportunity to give their feedback in an attempt to keep an orderly meeting. If you had the City Council, this would be your opportunity to do so. We do ask that you keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. When you hear the beeping up front, our city recorder keeps track of time, and that's an indication that your time has expired, and we would ask you to wrap up your comments. So with that, we will open call to the public.
Mayor and Council, my name's John McCleary. I want to come before you tonight, and I do not know if any of the snowplow drivers are here tonight, but you know, I've lived in Kaysville for over 50 years, and this year has been the very best that I've seen the snow removal done in Kaysville, particularly on the street that I live in. I speak for everybody that's on our street. Every day, or shortly thereafter, our road is done. The other night, and this was last week, I was out shoveling after the snowplow came by. You know how it scoops the snow in your driveway there, which doesn't bother me. At least they're out there doing it. And this snowplow driver was doing our road, and he rolled down his window and says, "Hey, I'm sorry I did that for you." And I said, "I'm thank you that you did," because it shows that he went down there. I think these men sometimes go without any accolades or anything from people. They take it for granted, but you know, they spend a lot of time. In the past, like I said, this is the best year I've seen it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other items for call to the public? Okay.
Mayor and City Council members, my name is Luke Johnson. I've got 2 items, make them quick. One, I've been following a lot of what's been going on Facebook, and as a plea from a citizen in Kaysville, as I've elected you guys, I really want to urge that the bickering and the backbiting stop from everybody on there. And then 2, I live out in West Kaysville, past Angel Street, off of 200 North. My concern is that intersection. Rumors been going around. It'd be nice to know what's actually going to happen out there. And I know we couldn't get into it tonight, but if something could come out to our neighborhood asking what our opinion is for that, would be awesome.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thanks, John.
I have a couple of things. Last week,
State your name for us, please.
Dean Wall.
Thanks, Dean.
The last meeting, I brought up the situation with Christy Shell, and I haven't heard anything back yet on that. The other thing is I was with South Davis Fire Department for 18 years, and I applaud the firemen here. We only had 3 full-time firemen at the time, and one of them actually took care of our equipment. And so, as far as supporting them and getting more full-time firemen, I agree with that. And I just happened to have had to use them this last week. I got something in my eye, and they came fairly quickly and got that taken care of. And then one other thing, as far as snow plowing, they've been doing a great job. In fact, one of the snow plow guys was out. It was on a Monday. I'd put my garbage can out, and he actually knocked my garbage can over, and he actually turned around, came back, and helped me put my garbage back in there. So I applaud what they do. They did a great job, and I mean, I don't know who the guy was. I didn't ask him his name, but I mean, it was pretty nice that he actually came back and helped me put my garbage back. So I have nothing good to say, or nothing but good to say about what they do, okay?
Thank you.
Mayor Hyatt, City Council, Mr. Scott, my name is Brett Garlick. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to address you. After listening to a few recent City Council meetings, I have a couple of issues I'd like to comment on. First, relative to parking around Davis High School, it has always been concerning to me when not in my backyard as a reason for any consideration or to adopt any ordinance. The citizens that live behind Kaysville Theater and Clyde Adams Dance Studio could come to the council with similar concerns about parking. I could come and ask for accommodations when Councilman Snell has a family event and his family parks their car in front of my house. Davis High School has been in existence since 1914, and the citizens and neighbors have dealt with the impacts of having the high school at that location. I don't know of one person who built a house in that neighborhood before 1914. They knew what they were moving next to when they bought their homes. If you pass an ordinance that will prevent or cause citizens to park within a certain distance of the high school, I'll be back up here in the next City Council meeting asking for a similar ordinance for my neighborhood, and will expect to be treated equally regardless of perceived differences in their backyard. Second, I want to address the extreme waste of time and money that has been happening with city resources relative to inappropriate behavior. As a former city councilman, I know what it is like to work with varied opinions and personalities. Heck, Mayor Hyatt voted against me twice. However, we were able to disagree without being disagreeable, and we accomplished a great deal for the citizens. Wikipedia defines bullying as the use of force, threat, or coercion to abuse, intimidate, or aggressively dominate others. Our society is hypersensitive about bullying and has implemented a great number of anti-bullying programs to set a proper example for our children. It is apparent that Mr. Adams has exhibited these traits. No amount of constructive criticism directed at him appears to cause any degree of introspection or self-reflection. Whenever inappropriate behavior is pointed out to him, he just goes on the attack, trying to shut down or intimidate anyone who speaks out against him. He just continues to bully in hopes that someone will behave badly, and then he deflects any criticism on them and points out their bad behavior. I believe his bullying has prevented other citizens from voicing their concern, just as I'm sure that after this comment I will be the focus and target of his inappropriate behavior and retaliation. People just don't think it's worth it to speak up. If someone disagrees, they are not only accused of being wrong, but also being bad or evil. I withdrew from the last city council election campaign because the leader of the group who supported Dave published lies in a newsletter about my 81-year-old mother. My wife and I concluded it just wasn't worth it. Good, honest citizens are looking at these city council meetings and thinking there is no way I would ever get involved. These actions will have serious consequences, not just now, but well into the future, with the legal costs associated with the need to create, administer, and enforce a code of conduct and continued bickering caused by Dave's inappropriate behavior and distractions like Big Red scandal. The costs are piling up and the citizens are tired of it. Dave, either get your act together or resign so the citizens of Kaysville can get back to the productivity they expect out of city staff and the city council when they aren't having to worry about you jumping out from behind bushes to accuse them of something or having to continually address your inappropriate tirades, coercions, or intimidations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items for call to the public?
My name is Jeff Dunford. Having read the city staff report on the parking issue, I thank them for their good work and thank you for your attentiveness and honestly wanting to resolve the situation. I'd like to make some brief observations and then a couple of recommendations. One detail that was just added to the staff report is the amount of parking spaces being talked about. Andy took a lot of time to figure this out, and there's 138 then parking spaces in our neighborhood around the high school, and there are 75 residents in the same area. So if you give each resident a space, that leaves 63 parking spaces that we're really only talking about for the students as a possibility. The zones that have been figured out will help reduce clumping, but will not eliminate the problem. Larry brought this out last time. Students will still park as close to the school within their zone as possible and will continue to park in those closer areas in front of mailboxes, garbage areas, and too close to driveways, etc. So part of the area will not have much of an impact, but part of the area will have the same impact as if the signs were down. With the additional burden and complexity of managing the permits to the city for only about 60 parking spaces, and then leaving many of the residents in an unsafe and an unacceptable situation, I'd hope the vote is to not have permits for students. It doesn't even come close to solving their parking issue and takes options out of the hands of the residents in the area. So for recommendations, I do agree that the city should do what it can to be a facilitator of reasonable options for the high school parking. The first thing that could be communicated to the school district is that the city could allow them to create some diagonal parking spaces along Main Street on the east side from 200 South down past the DATC sign and also up the DATC road on the south side. This could be accomplished by cutting the curb back far enough to construct the diagonal parking for use by students. The city wouldn't have this kind of money in their budget, but by making this area available to the school district, they would have an option to create a lot of parking if that was a priority to them. My second recommendation would be to offer city resources to enable a park and ride situation for students. Park and ride is a reality for many adults in the community and is environmentally friendly as well as cost saving. Recognizing that there are those students that have work schedules, off-campus classes, or extracurricular activities to deal with where they need the flexibility to drive alone, the school would need to have a priority system of using their parking lot for those students first. Then additional parking should be for carpooling only. The city has several parks that have many parking spaces that go largely unused during the school hours. Students can be grouped into ride-sharing groups of 4 or 5 individuals. Rather than having to go around picking each other up, they can go to a park and ride location, get into one vehicle that would then have the parking pass for the school parking lot. If there's more demand for park and ride spaces than is available in the parks, Then Councilman Garn's observation that the city streets are a resource could come into play. Areas in the city could be identified where students could meet locally, park 3 or 4 cars, and again carpool into 1 car to the school. I'm sure Councilman Adams will want to volunteer his home as a place where 4 cars could be parked in front of each day of school to accommodate the option. The point is that students don't, if they don't want to go to school in a bus and parents don't want to drive their kids to school at high school like they did at junior high, then this option could accommodate any number of students that want to drive.
Thank you, Mr. Dunford.
I wish I was that tall. Ron Zellinger. First of all, I'd like to thank Andy for involving some of us as in the neighborhood to provide him an opportunity of hearing some of our thoughts and incorporating any ideas that are beneficial into his staff report. That was a good experience, Andy. Thank you. Taking an informal survey, residents within the parking area that is being considered would rather have signs that say no parking between certain hours, period, than to open the parking up for various designs where permits are issued. The primary concern is congestion and safety. That's the primary concern. So I know, Councilwoman Lee, your concern, as you've expressed it, has been fairness and equity throughout the city. If that is done, then other areas that feel they have a unique parking issue, that could also be followed. No parking during certain hours. I noticed that if 65 parking spaces were available after you do the math of residents getting a space, there are quite a few parking places on Main Street from the stoplight down to the fire station that are hardly ever used. But as we noticed in the area, students will not park beyond 2 blocks. It seems to be too far to walk. Because outside 2 blocks, there's no signage, and yet rarely do we see students parking beyond 2 blocks. Main Street would require them to park a little further, but it provides almost 30 to 40, maybe 50 parking stalls that almost solve the problem if we do the math. But just reinforcing again, if it was taking the signs down versus putting signs up that says no parking period between those hours designated, that would be the residents' feeling. And we would live with that, not having access to our own street side parking during those times also. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other items for call to the public? Thank you. Seeing none, we will close call to the public and move to the next item on our council agenda, which is adding full-time employees to the Kaysville Fire Department. As mentioned earlier, we have lots of representatives here from the fire department, but we'll turn the time to our 3 captains to give their presentation. Shane, did you want to make an introduction?
Maybe I could just real briefly. As I'm new this last summer, I got the opportunity to sit down with all 3 captains, and one topic kind of rose to the top, and that was our current status as a part-time department. And we just talked about, well, if we want to add personnel, what do we do? And I thought it would be appropriate to just have them make the case they made to me of why it's important to them that we add some more full-time staff. And as you go into the budget, keep that in mind, how much of a priority that is for you, and then as we start talking about dollars, obviously we want to do a lot of things, we can't do everything, but I think their words will at least resonate with us enough that we can take that seriously, so.
Good evening. My name is Captain Jason Taylor. I'm one of the new full-time captains here with Kaysville Fire. The first thing I want to do is thank the City Council, City Manager, and the City Mayor for allowing us the opportunity to participate in your City Council meeting tonight. I'm going to start off and give us a brief introduction, and then Captain Eckhart will finish the presentation. So representing the fire department tonight, we have the three full-time captains. We have Captain Eckhart, Captain Shoup, and myself, Captain Taylor. We also have sitting in the audience tonight our Chief, Chief Larkin, and many of our part-time staff. Just a brief history about the full-time captains. We have 63 years experience between the three of us. Not only do we work full-time at Kaysville Fire Department, we are currently affiliated with and we work part-time at 5 other fire departments in Davis County and in Weber County. This has given us a great opportunity to not only see, but to experience other fire departments and their good practices and also practices that don't work so well. So our objective tonight is to communicate to you some of our challenges, concerns, our wants, and our needs. And the handout that's been given out has many items on it, but really our main focus tonight is going to be the addition of full-time firefighters. So realistically, we could probably talk for hours about all the items that we have, the items that concern us. So in the interest of time, we've put together this handout. And then in the handout, there's going to be various bits of information, and hopefully the information there can illustrate to you some of the challenges that we face today. I would ask that you take this handout home with you and you go through it and look at it. And if there's any information on there that you don't understand, or if you'd like additional information, please reach out to us. Any of us would be more than happy to talk to you and to expand on that. I can't stress enough the importance of the information that's in that packet. Also in the handout, you're going to see recommendations for staffing for now and in the future. So in order for us to make staffing recommendations, we had to do two things. And one of them is we had to make an evaluation of the fire department, how it's running today, and how it's been run. And the second thing that we had to do is we had to make clear expectations, and we had to clarify what our priorities are for the department. And to simply put our priorities, they are to be the best department that we can possibly be. We need to be the most effective, the most efficient, the most professional, and the most competent department that we can possibly be. So not only do we think this is our duty, we think this is an obligation that we have to move forward to keep on doing these things. So we live in a different world today than we did 20 years ago, and we live in a different world than we did 10 years ago. And Kaysville is no exception to that. And my point being is we need to move along with the future, and we need to be forward-thinking, and we need to be proactive and not reactive. And I'm going to close by stating one of my favorite quotes that I believe to be true, and that is, if we're not moving forward, we're falling behind. So at this point, we're going to watch a short 2-minute video, and then we're going to have Captain Eckhart finish the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Captain Eckhart. Thank you. I'm very humbled to be here today. It's Kaysville where I got my start 30 years ago. And I hate to say that 30 years, 62 years of experience. The reason we show this video is to show you how fast fire spreads. Our purpose is to make people's bad days better. There's a lot of things that happen in this world, and fire is one of them. You might think you're the safest person in your house, and the stars aligned or whatever, and then poof, there's a fire. As you notice in the video, it took 1 minute, 55 seconds before the alarm went off, the smoke detector alarm in the hallway. As standards go, the dispatch center is supposed to take the call, get all the information, usually of a hysterical person, and page us within 1 minute. And then our standard is to be bunkered up, have our air packs and everything ready to go, and drive out the door within 1 minute. So as you saw, 2 minutes have gone by before we actually get going. The room's well involved. And of course, that's just one room that's going to spread throughout the house. And that just shows how important it is for us to be there quickly in order for us to save lives. We want to be proactive, and we hope the City Council will be proactive as well. I had the opportunity to investigate a line of duty death to our neighbors to the north. Manpower was an issue. It didn't feel like a high priority until a firefighter died. There was a family in South Jordan or West Jordan, I can't remember which Jordan it was, didn't have the manpower, and the family died. I know there's a lot of more safe houses out there, but also they burn hotter, and they burn more aggressively once they get going, which puts us in danger because floors collapse, ceilings collapse, and cause us to be a little bit more hesitant going into a building, especially if we don't have the manpower to go in with us. We did some studying, myself and the three captains. Over the last year, the year of 2016, we had 966 hours that went uncovered. That equivalents to 80 shifts, 12-hour shifts that went uncovered. Most of those were Thanksgiving and Christmas, because I worked those days. And I think it was just because they didn't want to work with me, but those who did come work, they sacrificed, they left their families, and then they came and spent time with us at the fire station. And fortunately, we didn't have any fires this year, and Thanksgiving, it was a good year. We actually expect those. As far as callbacks, we like our firefighters to call back to the station. And callback means if we go out, we have firefighters come back in and man the station for when we have another call. Today, we had back-to-back and back-to-back. Fortunately, I was there preparing this presentation. The first ambulance went out, and the way we respond is an engine goes out and an ambulance goes out on medicals. And a lot of that is to protect ourselves from back injuries. I don't know why people fall between the toilet and the bathtub, or between the bed and the dresser, or they're upstairs or downstairs. But to just have two people try to move these patients and not be a burden to the patient, it takes 4 guys. So that's why we have guys or engine tied up on medicals. We've been told, and as we've discussed, that we clear as soon as possible. Once that patient's loaded up or they don't need us, we come back to the station and wait for that second call. Today, that didn't happen. Fortunately, I was there. The ambulance went on one call, and then while they were out there, the engine went up to the second call, and I was able to take an ambulance up to that second call. If I wasn't there, that would not have happened. We did not have him become called back on that occasion. Average, we get 1.9 callbacks throughout the year. So callbacks, again, people coming back to the station, that's the average of all our calls that we did. I went into a little bit more detail. I said, okay, let's just go down to where there's fires, house fires, car fires, shed fires, whatever there was a fire. We had an average of 2.9. As the NFPA asked that you don't respond without 4 people on your engine. So we don't have enough to respond on average. Of those 72 calls, 11 times nobody came back. That's 15% of those calls. Without coverage, for other fire calls was 62%. And then we had 33%. Nobody came back, or less than 2 came back to man the station and was not able to respond to an ambulance. And I went into more detail. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 68% of the time there was no callbacks. 98% of the time there was not enough to man an engine. And 89% of the time there was not enough manpower to man an ambulance. Now, this is not saying that the part-timers are not working out well. We're getting busy. And for them to keep coming back and keep coming back at nighttime, it affects their full-time job. So they can do what they can do, and to have them come in at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. is difficult for them to be able to function at their job, full-time job. And it's the way it is. I've talked to several chiefs throughout the state. I've talked to a chief east of Delta in a district. He has the same problem. He can't get, and it's a volunteer department, he can't get people back. Most of Kaysville and Farmington are now the only ones in Davis County that ask their people to come back, just to come back to cover the station. Syracuse, Clinton, Layton, they all say, if you don't come back, don't come back. But if there's a major event, a structure fire, a wind event that happened this last summer, they encourage you to come back. And they do. But I was on a structure fire or callback at Layton, my part-time job. 2 people came back. I had a battalion chief and myself. So 1 full-time and 1 part-time. So as we can see, we definitely need more manpower. And I don't know if it's just the culture or if it's people are just moving out of the state to become firefighters because of the retirement system. I don't know, but it's statewide, and it's a problem. Our calls have increased 45% over the last 4 years. Right now, our call volume as compared to last year is about 10%. Hopefully, it will stay around 10% and won't increase further than that. But as our calls increase, our callback people are getting burned out and unable to spend time with their family, spend time with us, and also be a quality worker at their full-time job. Our main request, I guess you'd say, our preferred request is that we add 2 full-time personnel that would bring us up to 5, 24/7. So that's per shift. So it'll be 6 total to cover our A, B, and C shifts. So we'd have 1 full-time captain, 1 full-time engineer, 1 full-time firefighter, and then we'd have 2 part-time firefighter and ambulance technicians. That is our wish. I know you have to look for the money. And that's our presentation. If you have any questions for us or the other captains, you have anything to add?
I'd just like to add, there's a portion in the handout that talks about the importance of response times. And to me, it's a real big deal to get to a call promptly. And For all of those people that live out west, our response time is very difficult to make it there in a timely manner. And one of the examples that I show is that once somebody goes into full cardiac arrest, their chances of survival will decrease by 10% for every minute that passes. So after 10 minutes, their chances of survival are very unlikely. And also with a house fire, depending on the literature that you look at, a house fire will grow in size. It'll actually double in size every 30 seconds to 1 to 2 minutes. And you can go ahead and look through the handout information as well, but I just wanted to stress the importance of the concern that I have about getting to our calls on time out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bring up our chart. It's a little bit blurry, but our chart there shows our population, our staffing, and our call volume. As you can tell we're on the left side, our call volume exceeds Farmington, Syracuse, and Clinton. All three of those have more full-time personnel than we do, especially Syracuse and Clinton. I don't know why Roy is so busy, but they have about the same population, and they're running 5,400 calls. Now, some of those their rescue covers the west side of Weber County. So some of those are that, but we can see that other cities have seen the need and are made plans and are implementing those plans. So again, it's our desire to keep you safe and also keep us safe. And we just want to make sure that we have adequate staffing to make your bad day a little bit better. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Captains. I'll open it to the council for any questions. I'd just start by saying, as we move into the budget season, this kind of detailed insight, I think, is very critical and valuable for the city council. At the end of the day, every governmental entity sometimes will have a budget committee who recommends, whether that's the finance director, the city manager, or an appointed committee. But at the end of the day, the budget committee is who you're looking at right now. And to have this kind of detail and to have this kind of information, I don't think you can place a value on it. It's very insightful and very helpful. So just make that comment, but then open to the council for any questions or comments.
Thanks, Captain Nick. Oh, thanks,
Please,
Captain. Thanks. Thanks, Captain Nick. I guess I'll speak. That's all right. Thank you for the presentation to both you and Captain Shoup and Captain Taylor. This is a terrific presentation. For years in Kaysville, we've known that we eventually have to get to the point where we add more full-time and eventually become a full-time fire department. There's just no other way around that. We've tried to patch here and there as best as possible because going to a full-time fire department is very, very expensive. But as your presentation has outlined, I think that it's very telling and I think moving that we need to. It's time, I think, and as we begin our budget discussions, I think we will certainly keep this presentation in mind as we discuss where to allocate budgets for the fire department in that regard. So, thank you for your presentation. It's a little bit sobering. Thank you.
If I may make a personal comment. First of all, as an accountant, I look at this and I think, gosh, how have we done that in Kaysville so long compared to other cities with just part-time people and respond to that many calls? That's very impressive and a real credit to the part-time employees who perform that work. But I had an experience in December, late December, with a family member who lives in Kaysville, my daughter, and she had an emergency situation, at 2 a.m. And called my wife and I ran up to the house real quick to her house, and her husband was there. He was on the phone. He had just picked up the call because my wife had said, "You need to call emergency right away." As he was calling, I arrived there. It couldn't have been more than maybe 2 minutes and 30 seconds. There was 4 Kaysville Fire Department EMT personnel there immediately who handled it very professionally, even, keeping the situation light, but very professional and moving her out. I think my daughter made some comment about, they were saying which hospital to take him to, and said something, is this Kaysville City? My daughter joking, is this Kaysville City stuff? My dad's pretty cheap. So, but I was amazed how fast. She lives on the east side, pretty close to the station. So it made sense that they could get there fast. And just on a personal note, I can't tell you, it's one thing to just imagine and to think about, theoretically, people's lives, which is powerful enough, but when it's your own daughter, my first daughter, who almost died when she was born, and that feeling comes back of, is she going to be okay? My daughter, and then it really means something to have the professionals there fast enough to perhaps save a life. And I would just add, in this materials also, it talks about having a substation out on the west side. I think that, that call wouldn't have been able to arrive, just physically impossible to arrive that quickly if it was on the west side from the station here on the east side. So I think that's also something we need to look at in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Any questions?
Hey, just a couple questions. First of all, and maybe Shane can answer this, but do we own land for a fire station on the west side?
Not that I know of. I can't think of any land that we own.
Yeah,
We did, if you recall, last summer, acquired some of the open space from the Old Mill Farm subdivision next to the substation just at Burton Lane on the west side. We think that if it ever came to that, that may be an appropriate location to consider.
So is it big enough then for?
We think so, yeah. Right now it's being used for storage for public works and power, but the thought has occurred to us over the years that would, being centrally located on the west side, might be an appropriate location.
That actually is a good location, that area. Here's another question. It's probably because I'm just not very smart, but I've been reading through this, and they talk about permanent part-time and part-time. What's the difference between those two?
A permanent part-time person would work 24 hours a week as compared to, and they would be assigned a shift, either a shift, B shift, or a C shift. Because of the federal laws, they cannot work more than 29 hours, I think it is. So we'd have to limit them to 24 hours. And the reason we brought that up is to help us be more consistent in our training and be able to have our crews more solid, I guess you'd say. One of the things that came up with Kendall Bryant's death is that crew, when they went into that house fire, had never worked together before. And Kendall also worked at Ogden. And so Ogden does things a little bit different than Layton, and so they were not on the same page. And that's why we want more crew cohesiveness, is for the safety of all of us. And the permanent part-time, I think, would help with that, and also with staffing, especially on the holidays.
Well, I've noticed that a lot of the part-time people that work for Kaysville, are full-time in other cities. And, they do that as, I think a lot of it is service. I've never met a fireman. It's in their blood. And I mean, thank goodness there's people like you out there, because there's a lot of people that don't want to do that kind of service. I could see in other cities, and I think when you have a full-time fire department too. I would think that a lot of times, a lot of individuals, as they're training and stuff, they do it as a permanent part-time, and then when openings come up, they apply for those positions. Is that typically how it works in a lot of the cities?
That is correct. And Chief Ward and I have been arguing with the federal government about the SAFER grant, and they state in the rules this year is that you cannot hire from your part-time staff. And we've been fighting with them because that's, I think, is just ridiculous, because they already know the system. They already know the equipment. And then to say, no, you have to hire from the outside to fill a SAFER grant position. So it's been a struggle.
I appreciate that. I think I asked all the questions. Or
Any other questions from the council?
Were we expecting any motion or on this, or
is this
just direction to staff?
Is this just a discussion?
I think it's just a discussion item for now. Certainly, as we come into the budget session, this is going to need to be I mean, you can, really can't make a motion to hire additional employees
they'd
since
love that, but
we haven't
I wouldn't do it right
budgeted
now.
for it. I mean, you can.
We
It
would be
just
okay
might-
with that.
it might-
Hey, can I make one comment? You know, when this came out and beforehand, I've been talking to some other cities of other firemen that I know that work there and friends, and in fact, several of my employees became firemen, a lot better life than what I provided for them. But one of the things that they mentioned is many times when cities have to go through a transition, and I mean this is the transition that Kaysville's going through.
Yes.
I think we've known for a long time that this was going to take place. And I think that the thing that I'm concerned more than anything is, and Chris was right when he said this is going to be expensive. I mean, you know, and it's not just like, for example, if you just build a fire station number 62 down there, I mean, you still got to put the equipment in it. You still have to have employees that you have to hire, and there's a process that takes place, and it's an expensive process. I'm just wondering if it'd be wise, and I'll just throw this out to the council, would it be wise to, I know a lot of these other cities, there's companies out there and consultants that'll actually help people into this transition. They'll give recommendations and a good way of approaching it, and because I guarantee you that I don't think it's going to be a deal that we can afford to just instantly have everything that we need. I think that would be a burden that would be very hard on the city. But I think that the council feels very strongly that we care about the safety of the city and we want to move forward on these kind of things. So I guess that's the question I have. Is that something that we could look at and that we could have recommendations and have something solid that and maybe a path or a course that we could see and say, okay, you know, within the next 2 years we want to do this, the next 4 years, and I think it's probably you guys have a way of tracking calls and everything, and they're pretty consistent, and you can see where we're going, and we'll know that within 5 years we're going to need this kind of manpower and this type of training and this type of equipment. And I don't know, I'm just throwing that out because I've noticed a lot of fire departments do it that way, and I'm just wondering if that's the best way to make sure that we don't look back in 2 years and say, wow, I wish we would have done that a little bit different.
Well, the thing I was going to stand up and say is on that aspect, we have had a chief that has been very, very, I guess you might say, blessed in the city council by giving him very good equipment. So the fire station we have now is actually staffed with 2 engines, 2 brush trucks, 3 ambulances right now, and it's actually a good thing because one of them's down for being serviced right now, so we have a backup. But so if you were to open a second station for the interim right off the bat, we could take one of each and move it down to that station. So you could fill it then. Yeah. You know, the engine is getting a little bit older. It's, you know, a 2000, 2001, and, you know, they do have lifespans, so it would have to eventually be replaced. But it is still a functional rig, and it can serve its purpose for a while. Same with the ambulances. They actually are brand new except for our backup. The brush trucks are in really good shape. So we do have equipment right now that we could fill a second station with for the interim starting up right now. And then in the future, replace the elder equipment with new stuff. And then as far as your, what you're talking about with the staffing and the equipment, or the staffing and the cost, some of the cost is already being funded right now, because you would, the money you are paying for that part-time position, transitioning it to a full-time position, it's already being funded, a portion of it, and that information is in the packet.
As far as consultants, the northern Davis County, which was Clearfield, West Point, Clinton, Sunset, and I believe Syracuse was involved with it, they hired a consultant to come in and give them some direction. And it was horribly done. Horribly done. Myself and Chief Scott Adams from Layton and Chief Ward looked at it, and it really did not meet the citizens' needs. So if we do go that route, we need to make sure we get a good company that will give us a true reflection of what the citizens need, and not just to give you a report to get money from you. So that's my comment on that.
Yeah.
So I can't resist one comment on that, because I've used consultants not for something like that, but for IT considerations, for enterprise software, for a company of 1,800 people. And consultants can be very helpful, but the best ones, but they can also be very expensive and very ineffective. And the best consultants that come in really get to know and involve the people who will be continuing the management of that company or of that department, fire department. So they really need to get to know, if they're going to be effective, Kaysville's needs. It can't just be a boilerplate or, you know, a simple thing. They really have to integrate with the chief and the other fire department staff to understand how the department works and understand the needs of Kaysville if they're going to be effective. So.
Any other comments, questions?
Do you feel like you have a direction?
No, but.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say.
I don't need it right now anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think one option or one bit of direction that the council could give, whether or not it's a consultant or whether or not it's a plan. The report here, which is available in the council's packet, that is also available online, that anybody would like to see it, is very comprehensive, and as you mentioned, gives a few options about what we'd like to see, and maybe what we think is a reasonable implementation approach, and to Councilmember Page's comment about not being able to do it all at one time. But at the end of the day, I think the direction, and maybe each of the council members can speak to this a little bit. I've heard a few of you say already that clearly something needs to be done, and we need to be able to, and this report actually does that, especially with the well, it's not a fiscal note. Well, it's kind of like a fiscal note tied to it. Gives us a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. But maybe starting as we come into the budget season, maybe the direction to staff is, I mean, if the council feels like, no, sorry, we just can't do it, let's just continue with the way we're doing it and not make any changes, then maybe give that direction. But my sense is, or what I'm hearing is, we'd like to look at some kind of implementation to work into. There's so the direction you could give staff is to come. Well, I was going to say we kind of have it, but we kind of have to have the information. So we could tell you to come back with the same information that these gentlemen have already prepared. But if the council would like to see some direction, as Shane and I talked a little bit earlier about putting together a budget, I think we can give direction to come back with something that's reasonable, and then the council will have to prioritize how you do it. If you really have a couple of options, you can anticipate revenue and then spend less money in one area that you want to spend money here, but at the end of the day, we probably need to have a reasonable implementation plan. Now, whether that's by a consultant or whether that's we have 3 great options. Maybe what we could use there is a 5-year or a 5-year plan and what we'd like to see reasonably over the next several years. My gut would tell me that would be a good next step, but would welcome differing thoughts from the council.
I have
Captain.
one question, if we can move on that permanent part-time. It wouldn't cost the city any extra money because it's the same pay and it's already been allocated. But I think it's a new position, technically, if you go into HR stuff. I don't know if you need to vote on that or if that can be just at the blessing of our city manager, but we would like at least start moving forward with that and be able to get a little bit more consistency started and help with our training, on-duty training.
So for the permanent part-time position?
Yes, yes.
For one permanent part-time position?
There'll be 3, one for A shift, one for B shift, and one for
Okay.
C shift.
So the direction could be to direct staff, especially if we're looking at the impact, the financial impact being somewhat minimal, or sounds like minimal or none, to come back at least as a first step. I would like to see us look past just that and not maybe become complacent and say, all right, the permanent part-time, that's great. Now we don't have to worry about it for another couple of years. I don't think that would probably be the right approach, and I'm not sensing that anybody else does either. But that is something that you could verify from a budgetary standpoint that we could do right away.
Right.
And even by our next meeting potentially. And so maybe the direction that, and we could make it with a motion, is to direct staff to come back to the council at our next meeting with amendments to implement the permanent full-time, permanent part-time positions, and then either, I don't know, we can come back with a plan in 2 weeks, but begin to formulate an implementation plan for our longer-term needs.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we recommend staff add 3 permanent part-time positions, 1 per shift.
Is it a motion or we just?
We can make that motion, I think, considering our agenda item. It's not doing it, it's really to be a motion to ask staff to come back. So if we can just make it as a recommendation unless we're divided and we want to make it very clear. But we have a motion that I'll recognize. It is a motion of direction, but I think it's appropriate.
Thank you for that clarification. That's consistent with my motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I will certainly second that.
Thank you. A motion and a second is outlined. Any further discussion? On that item, we'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Garn?
Aye.
I'd like to see further study on the longevity of the cost, nay.
On the permanent part-time?
Well, where that's going to lead us down the road.
We're right in the middle of a vote and that we've started, so when we called for additional discussion, I think that probably would have been the best time for the discussion, but we could, if you all want to vote nay and then go back to the discussion, we can, but right now we have an aye and a nay. Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, I would like to see a little bit more information, so I'd like to hold off a nay.
Aye.
Gee, I'm right in the middle. It seems like I'm always the guy that makes the decision here. Well, I guess we can't talk about it, can we?
We can. If you vote nay, we'll go
Okay.
back and have more discussion.
Let me go nay, because I have some questions.
Okay.
But I think I'm pretty good about going this route.
So the motion fails 3-2. Now we're back to the discussion.
Okay. You need
No,
to,
go ahead.
you want to comment? Or?
Well, I will, but I'm okay.
Okay, I'll remember what I want to talk about.
Well, okay. Well, I guess what I would say is, I don't think there's a real big difference between what we're doing now and what Captain Eckert's proposing, in that if the staffing fell, for example, if somebody signed up for the shift for 24 hours every month, they would kind of be a permanent part-time person there anyway. I mean, aren't we just right now filling shifts as people get into them? And what we would be doing is, I guess, obligating somebody for that shift that was interested in that
Yes.
that could arrange their schedule to be there at that time, adding consistency that kind of thing. Is there any other difference there besides what I'm?
No, it allows a part-timer to, I guess, get guaranteed hours, but it also helps us know that someone will be there. It won't be that, okay, we're only gonna have 2 today, and maybe at noon we'll have 1 for another hour, but it will guarantee that we will have that person there.
Every month, on Mondays.
Every week. It'll be
every week
every
on Mondays,
week.
right?
Yeah.
And I guess I would want to just look, Dean you kind of acts as our HR director, just want to make sure that we're not creating a new position, which I don't think we are. And is there do we have this kind of definition in our policies? If there's something in there that we need to add, we'd probably want to do that as well. But again, I don't think we're doing too much except for hopefully adding some consistency. Nothing else financially would be changing.
Yeah, I just, my concern was today, I didn't think we were coming to make a vote on something, and that's why I thought it might be best to direct staff for our next council meeting to come back with something, because we just saw this. We only just got this the other day, and so this is just all new to us as far as we want to support what your need is, but we definitely want to proceed, and I'd like to see
We can certainly do that without a vote even tonight. We can look at that. If there's something for you to take action on, we could bring it back to you.
And that was, and to the point earlier, is I don't think we necessarily needed a motion unless the feeling was, no, we don't want to direct staff, but I think the motion was just to direct staff to come back. It wasn't changing a position, it wasn't allotting more funds, it was directing them to spend the time. Now, we can do that, we've done that without a motion, and so certainly not necessary, but certainly not inappropriate as the point is trying to make.
Mayor, could I make just one more comment? Would that be all right?
Yes, please.
First of all, I agree with the comments of both Councilmember Page and you, Mayor, regarding the need to implement this methodically. We certainly wouldn't want to, just take Plan A tonight, or maybe even 2 weeks from tonight, and move forward with that plan and instantly do it without going through the budget process. So certainly I think the sort of will or the sentiment, and I don't want to represent anyone else, but at least I'll speak for myself, is that we need to move in that direction. We can't continue to have the same system that worked for a much smaller community to a growing community that has, and so I think there's probably pretty much agreement on that point. And I also agree that we should have a plan in place. We shouldn't just be voting. I think the only reason I made this motion to direct staff to take a look at this is the way I understood it is there was no, and I would have wanted to look at exact numbers too, if it hadn't been my understanding that there was no financial impact. So all you're doing is taking part-timers that you're probably paying by the hour anyway, you're paying them by the hour. You're either going to have a temporary person that may or may not be there, and all you're saying is, as a part-time person, rather than just be on call, you're going to be permanent in that you're going to be available on that shift, and every shift's going to be covered by one permanent part-time person. But you're not going to be paying them any more for the hours that they're going to be there than you would the part-timer that would have been there anyway, except to the extent that you're now going to have a consistent shift. You're going to have it covered. And that would seem like, and so I'm fine not to vote on it tonight, but I would not want to wait too long, because that seems like a zero-cost benefit that we could do immediately that's just structural with no cost, that could ensure the safety of our community. So I'm not sure that we would want to wait too long on that, but because it was just direction to staff anyway, and maybe we don't need a motion, but I was thinking that we weren't making any financial or other commitment other than just a structural improvement. And probably it could even be made internally without even the city council voting on it.
I think it can just be direction, unless there's a division among the council to say, no, we don't even want to investigate that further, then maybe a motion would be necessary. But I think by just giving the direction to say, give us something to take action on, especially when we understand the fiscal impacts. Longer term, it was a study that maybe was less horrible, Well, let me rephrase that. It was a wonderful study about our power department and long-term resources. I say horrible because it was, it was really boring. But it was nonetheless important, but it was kind of a step back to say, here's where you need to be long-term, and here's how you need to implement it, and here's some suggestions on how to implement it. That's what I think we'd also like to see, to say, we know that this is where we need to be. It's unrealistic to jump from here to there. We have budgetary constraints that need to be considered. We have a sister city that we need to also consult with and get their feedback and understand how that would fiscally impact them when we make that change and see what their feelings are long-term. And so there are some of those things that I think could also be part of the direction to say this easier thing to address we could do sooner, but also give the staff the address, whether it's maybe staff comes back and says, we can tell you what we think, but we really think you should have an independent professional give you a game plan, then great, maybe that's the recommendation. But I'm hearing without a motion that we're still giving the same direction. We're not taking any official action tonight, but asking them to come back as a step one with those amendments for the permanent for part-time, and then as a step two, sooner than later, an implementation plan, whether we do it in-house or whether staff recommends somebody else to give us that guideline. I'm sorry to the power department. It wasn't that boring. It was a great presentation. Sorry, Sue. I just couldn't stay awake during it.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but a citizen wanted to make a comment on the part-timer from South Davis. I don't know if this is appropriate time for that or not, but.
It's probably, at this point, I think we're pretty much wrapped up for the discussion, so I think we're.
I'm sorry I took so much time as well.
Oh, you're okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
Do you now have as much
We're good.
direction as you need?
Yep, I got too much direction, I think, at this point.
That's what
I'm
you get
good,
for saying you
though.
didn't have enough in the first place.
That's right. I won't make that mistake again.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for discussion. Thank you to all of our firefighters and captains for being here, and Chief for being here with us this evening. Appreciate your service. Next item on the agenda is Parkwood Subdivision Phase 1 acceptance of improvements at approximately 35 West Shepherd Lane. Mr. Thompson.
Parkwood Subdivision, it's identified here on the map, down on the southwest quarter of town. It's been under construction most of summer. They've now completed the improvements. Public Works Department has inspected them and recommended them for acceptance. There's one minor issue that I'll bring to your attention. Just along this area here where the road was installed, adjacent to property that is not included in the subdivision, there's a little bit of a grade difference there. They've been working with Mr. King, the owner of the adjacent property. They now have a plan in place that's acceptable to both parties. They've asked that can be delayed and installed once the weather clears up. Our ordinance allows for landscaping features to be installed after acceptance of the improvements. We do keep additional bond to guarantee that it will happen. So with that one caveat, we would recommend that we accept the improvements on this subdivision.
And just to be clear with that, I had met with Mr. King, and I know he's here tonight regarding his property there and the difference in elevation. So if we have the provision that allows us to say, great, we'll accept the improvements with the exception of the landscaping. In other subdivisions, we have maybe specified an amount or specified or at a minimum make a motion to accept the improvements with an amount that staff deems appropriate to ensure that the improvements take place so that we don't run into a position where it's now, we delay it and then it's November and, haven't done that yet, and then snow flies and then he's into another year. Is that what your recommendation is?
Yes, that we accept the improvements so that they can have occupancy into the homes that are under construction, but we hold additional bonding based on the cost estimates to ensure this landscaping feature gets installed in a timely manner.
And
if you'd like to set a time on that, we've done that in the past as well.
That was my question, is how much time do we give, or because sometimes don't the bonds expire, and if it's not done, then the city's.
This is a cash bond.
Okay.
They deposit money with the city, so it does not expire, but there's still appropriate to set a deadline. Mr. King actually requested that they not do it during the inclement weathers and track mud all over his property as well. So the intent is to do it once the ground dries out a little bit.
Do you know the amount that we need to specify, or
Top
do
of my
we?
head, I think it's about $40,000, which is above and beyond the normal 10% warranty that we already have as well.
Motion could be to accept with a 10% warranty and an additional $40,000 for the landscaping improvements.
Yeah.
My question, Andy, is your staff report indicates that there was an issue with a portion of some curb repair as well. Is that the same issue, or is that different?
That's been addressed since the staff report was written.
That's already been handled.
All right.
Well, I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we accept the Parkwood Subdivision Phase 1 improvements with the standard 10% bond plus the additional $40,000 bond to cover the landscaping need, and have that with the stipulation that that landscaping repair be done this calendar year. Is that soon enough, or would you rather have a specific date, July 31st?
Let's say before July 1st.
Before July 1st is fine.
That gives them more than adequate time of good weather.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Lee as outlined. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Councilmember Adams, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Voting is unanimous. Next on our agenda is final plat approval for Clifton Subdivision at 42 North Angel Street. And part of this, 42 North Angel Street. Ms. Thompson.
Last several months, we've reviewed this property a couple times. See it here, I highlighted on the map. It's on Angel Street, just south of 200 North. Mr. Clifton currently lives in a home that fronts Angel Street. He has rezoned and had preliminary plat approval for a 3-lot subdivision. The existing home on the front lot, creating 2 flag lots behind his property. He's now ready for the final plat approval. Got the engineering in order, and we're Planning Commission and the staff both recommend approval of this 3-lot subdivision.
A quick question, and just to kind of clarify on flag lots like this, how do they deal with getting fire trucks back in there? We just had all this fire discussion. Does that make it more difficult, or do they have a game plan for how they get back to these homes?
Of course, the fire chief has opportunity to review all these. What we require on a double flag lot is 36-foot wide strip of property with a minimum 20-foot paved access back to the homes. They determined that would be adequate to get emergency services in there at that short length. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and accept the Clifton Subdivision final plat.
I'll second that.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Lee and a second by, Councilmember Page. I'm trying to read the next agenda item and my mind just went blank. Motion by Councilmember Lee and a second by Councilmember Page for approval as outlined. Any further discussion? Councilmember Lee, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is final plat approval for Meadow Manor Subdivision amended at 1512 South Driftwood Lane.
We actually approved this subdivision a couple of years ago. It's just located off of Burton Lane on the Driftwood Lane development. The issue is that property line was between the 2 neighbors, requested to be adjusted to make things work better for both of them. This went through the process and was approved. There was some issues with the engineer getting the plat printed. Our ordinance states that if it's been a year since the approval date, that the approval was voided. The plat came in after the 1-year period. I'll be honest with you, it got lost on my desk for a couple months as well. But as I cleaned my desk and found it, I felt it was appropriate to bring this one back and have it reapproved. We see it as very minor. It doesn't have any significant issues, but just freshen the date on it. And then we have the plat in hand. We'll get it recorded within the next few weeks, maybe even days.
Yeah, well, I think so. Well, Andy, Council, I'll make a motion to approve the Meadow Matter subdivision amended final plat.
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Page and a second by Councilmember Garn for approval as outlined. Any further discussion? Councilmember Snell, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Next on our agenda is final plat approval for Lot 9 Kingsview Estates amended at 278 East Shepherd Lane.
This is very similar. It was in the same pile with the last one. It's been approved in the past. It's out on the Shepherd Lane, big lot just immediately west of the rail trail. Requested to split into 2 lots, the existing home and the flag lot in the back. Again, it's been previously approved. The 1-year period has expired, so we're just requesting that we refresh the date, and we'll get this recorded immediately as well.
Okay. Any discussion or make a motion?
Well, you have the discussion?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve Lot 9 Kingsview Estate amended final plat.
Second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Page and seconded by Councilmember Garn. And start the vote with Councilmember Page.
Okay, aye.
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 Okay. Next on the agenda, we have, we're going to go ahead and talk about the parking proposal for the residents around Davis High.
At the last meeting, you asked staff to look at a proposal that would allow both students and residents to park on the streets in the area. The area what we've studied is the area that currently has parking restrictions north of Davis High School. So the staff has considered the impacts that were discussed at the last couple meetings on this and the various options that may be available. The option that we've come up with to allow both, well, what we tried to accomplish was to allow some student parking in this area while reducing the impact to the residents. That becomes very difficult just because of the administrative portions of it, trying to determine who's allowed to park where. One of the suggestions that was made at the last meeting is if you take a block at a time and just issue permits per block. One of the shortcomings of that suggestion was that the students, if they're free to park on that block, are going to accumulate at the end of the block, regardless of how many permits you issue for there. Those people will park as close to the school as possible, so it doesn't completely solve it. I looked at it and thought, well, if we go mid-block to mid-block, you may have a small clump here and some space, and a small clump here and some space. It helps mitigate that somewhat. It certainly doesn't solve it completely, but it helps somewhat. Another thing I looked at, we go to this data sheet that was included in your packet. In each of those zones, I went through and just on an aerial photo that was at scale, I blocked out 20 feet on each corner, 10 feet on each side of each driveway. And then any space that was at least 20 feet long that was left over, I counted those spaces. So, you know, if there was a 30-foot space, that only counted for 1 parking stall. If there was a 40-foot space, that counted for 2. So under that methodology, I counted the number of spaces that would be available in each, what I called zone. That's what these numbers here are. Assuming that some of these zones would be more desirable than other zones, the more desirable zones, I'm suggesting some kind of reduction factor. These numbers that are shown here can certainly be debated. The idea was to thin out the most desirable areas where the impact would be the greatest. Again, they still may all park in one person's front yard, but at least it thins it out a little bit. So the idea would be then to take the total spaces times the reduction factor and issue that number of permits for each zone. Just for information, I included the number of residents that had driveways fronting that road or that zone as well. So you can see those numbers. I think included in the packet, if you add up the number of signs to accomplish that, that's 50 signs. We're suggesting a sign that would look something, probably not exactly like this, but something like this. Possibly at the bottom with the zone indicated. I couldn't make this bigger. If I did it for real, I'd make it bigger. With an arrow pointing the direction, he may have A, permit one direction and B, permit another direction, but that was kind of the essence of the proposal I came up with to accommodate parking by permit.
Andy, did you have a page also that kind of estimated the cost of the permits, the signage, and the enforcement?
Yes, I did. I'm sorry it didn't get put on the.
I think it's the third page
on the
of our
PowerPoint.
of our
It's in your packet.
that section.
Just from recollection, the signs cost about $200 if you do a complete sign installation to get the plaque and the pole and the installation. So at 50 signs, that's $10,000. I did not include any cost for painting of the curb. I blocked out the areas in calculating the parking stalls, but I'm not recommending any paint to identify those. The actual permits, fairly cheap, $400 or $500. Administration, that's somewhat of a guess. I think I showed 20 hours at $80 an hour, $1,500, $1,600 for that. Then the other expense, that's again a little bit hard to calculate, but with an assumption of 1 hour a day by a police officer. I believe there's 180 school days in a year. It's within one or two. By the time you put a police officer's salary, benefits, vehicle, radio license, other equipment, support with the secretary's back, I think $100 an hour is probably a conservative estimate. The math comes out to $18,000 for enforcement under those assumptions. Now, certainly, any of those assumptions can be contested, and if the thing works right, hopefully the enforcement would reduce after the initial phase, and there's also possibly an offset on that cost with the fines for violation.
And Andy, one question on the 18,000 or the 180 hours. Is that how much additional you think, or as you were talking with the chief, and that is that how much additional hours it would cost to implement this kind of permitting as opposed to just a 10 to 2 no parking sign?
I'm sorry, we didn't do that comparison.
So there probably would be, I pick a number out of the air, not that it's accurate, but if you said it was half, you'd take a half an hour a day or 15 minutes or something, but there would be some cost of enforcing even the 10 to 2.
That's legitimate, yes.
Yeah.
I really appreciate all the time and effort you put into this plan, but to be quite honest, I don't like it.
I feel sorry for you.
I don't like it at all. I think it's extremely hard to implement it, and to be fair, we need to come up with something that would work anywhere in the city, not just in one area of the city. And with that being said, I have thought and thought and thought about this, and I don't think there's any real easy answer that's going to make everyone happy. But I think an easier way to deal with this would be to say to every resident that has problems with the parking, we will pick whatever color you want and paint the curb for enough for one one spot, maybe one and a half spot in front of their home, of their picking, and say, and then stencil on it or whatever, you know, permit parking, or just, you know, anywhere that the curb is painted green, you have to have a permit to park there. And then anywhere else that it isn't can be filled in by whoever. And nobody else needs a permit but the residents that live with that home. That way you can go to any school, any area by the theater. You can give all the residents that deal with this the same option. You know what, we'll give you a section of your curb and paint it green. And then they have that ability to have a spot in front of their home that only they can park and have the flexibility of having that open for them. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Hey, let me add, this thing doesn't go very well. Here, let me shoot you, Jake, with this. And can you can't see that? I think the battery's dead.
There's red lips.
All right, well. This is what happens when you're the low man. They give you these kind of things. Hey, right here, like for example, the way it is right now, I just don't see that this plan would ever work in the aspect that even if you give out a certain permits, I mean, there's all the parking right there. And I mean, these guys are gonna have the same problem. They're not gonna have access to the front of their yard, and it's gonna be taken by parking. I think the same thing in here and the same thing along here. I just think that, you know, in this zone, it's going to be these right here that take it all, and right here it's going to be these that take it all. And I just, it's kind of complicated. I actually like Susan Lee and what her approach is. I tell you, one advantage of it, and one of the concerns, and some of the people of the area have talked to me about, is, for example, my daughter, she deals with senior care, and she takes care of people. And if there's an elderly person here that needs to have somebody come in and help them several times a day, which they do, I mean, it'd be a very difficult thing if they never had access to be able to park in front of their house. The same thing as if you owned a business and you had a home type business and you needed to have some of that parking. I think one good thing about what she's saying as well is those areas that you need to have where your garbage cans and your mailboxes and other things like that could be painted, and then you're secure from people parking there. I think this is very easy it seems to me, for the police to enforce as well. But then it also gives, you know, some options for the students as well, that they can have the ability and find places to park. You know, I'm of the opinion too, and I think that there's people out there that maybe they have a big enough driveway and they really don't care if people park in front of their house, and, you know, they can choose and just say, you know what, I really don't want it painted, and let the kids park here. I mean, that could be an option too. So I think it gives some freedom to the citizens, but it gives them an opportunity too to protect a parking spot. So if they absolutely need that, they can. I think that one thing about this is I think it'd help you save money on, I don't think that you need a ton of signs for something like that. You could just put a few out where the students could get to know that, hey, you know, we don't park in green if that's the color we use. And they'll get to know that quickly, and it'd be easy for the police to enforce it, and so permits would just be given out to the homeowners. You know, there's no good answer to this, but I think that's probably one of the more reasonable, I guess, the best solution of a bad solution. I don't know.
I'm not opposed to that. I did look at an option that was along those lines. One of the concerns would be, and it's not necessarily a killer to the deal, but if you're just painting curb, you know, in the last 2 weeks you haven't seen any curbs.
Well, that's true, but you know what?
You can get over that.
You can.
That's what you choose to do.
I mean, they paint red on the curb all over, and they don't have signs saying it's painted red here.
Those are typically in areas that are known to be no parking areas already. But I'm not saying that, you know, I'm willing to put that type of plan together as well. By the way, we're going to use brown for Davis High School, not green for some place like Clearfield.
Traders up here. So are we basically saying we're kind of softening up? Is that what the feel of the body is up here? We're going back.
You
The
want me to-
original meeting, this was proposed. So is that kind of what we're thinking?
It's pretty similar.
We're going back to paint the curbs. Okay.
But the
Interesting.
original meeting, it was
I mean,
not with permitted parking for the residents. So we're, as I understand it, you'd like a plan now that allows one parking stall at least in
I
front
would
of
say
each.
maybe a car and a half.
Well, what I
A big
Because
spot.
that way they can put garbage.
yeah.
when I looked at it before, if you take the 10 feet by the driveways and you adjust it accordingly, it gives the residents adequate room, more than a stall, more than just 20 feet place. So I would be happy to go through and put that proposal together, similar to what I did with this one, and run the numbers and the data. And
So we'll give them each side of the wing of their driveway plus some.
the
and
10
that's
feet
off
plus
limits.
the 20 feet.
And then if a student is parked in there, the remedy is what? Ticket, boot it, tow it?
Yeah.
Something along those lines that we've
Ticket,
talked
yeah.
about before?
At 10 o'clock, you ticket it. At 11 o'clock, you boot it. At 12 o'clock, you tow it.
I'm impressed, council, at the softening of your hearts. I'm
Well,
absolutely
what,
surprised.
the only,
I don't
Yeah.
think, two of us haven't spoken yet.
yeah, I realize that. One thing that I would like to say too, if we decide to go this way, and of course we need other people speaking as well, that, you know, if there's special needs for individuals that own these homes, I think we need to take that in consideration as well. If they need more than one parking spot, you know, without publicly shunning them or anything else. I mean, it just depends. I think we need to be reasonable.
Just a point of clarity for these folks here, I have not spoken with these council members, period, about this at all. So, I mean, I know the comment earlier was I could understand and read what that meant, because that's kind of been what I've championed all along since day one here. I have not spoken with these council members whatsoever. So whatever softened their hearts, maybe I don't know.
Councilmember Snell?
I'm good.
Sure.
I will mention this red zone here, which is primarily Virginia Street. It's already no parking around the corner for the signal and just normal reasons. I'm going to suggest that Virginia Street, right now there's not a problem, but it just be maybe left how it is. It's not near as wide as the other streets. It almost has different issues to deal with, but.
I feel fine with that.
That's fine, okay.
Yeah, I would think that Virginia Street is way too narrow to accommodate any street parking there. And Andy, I appreciate the time that you have put into this. You've clearly put in a significant amount of time, and even just looking at the map as it is with all the rainbow of colors there, it obviously it appears very complicated and would be pretty cumbersome, I think, and based on your cost estimate, you know, fairly not cheap to get all the signs that would need to be there, and paint, and then the enforcement and others. So I think the idea, or the where I am falling on this is I am still of the opinion that this is a public resource that is in, you know, high demand, and it is in need of management in some fashion. I do not think we want to get back to how it used to be before there were no parking signs there, where I mean, I think the term free-for-all has been used a few times, and it kind of was that. There was haphazard parking almost everywhere during the school days. I think it is important in my discussions with the school and with the community council members and parents who were concerned about, making sure that there were accommodations for parking for students. I hear all those. I also hear the concerns of the local residents who have been tremendously impacted. And frankly, for me, the argument that they moved into a home so near Davis High, so, their concerns are basically null and void, doesn't resonate with me. I don't respect that argument. I think that there are, it would be a tremendous burden on anyone to live in that immediate area, going back to how it used to be. I would love to see, and Mr. Dunford, I believe it was, stood up and called to the public tonight and mentioned a couple of ways that the city could open up some accommodations or attempt to work with the school district and the school specifically to try to help. I think it would be, I don't think Davis High is going to ever have enough parking to allow all students to drive on their own. It's just never going to be there unless they want to build a 3-story parking terrace that that basically accommodates the entire parking lot. I'm not sure, I know that no one is arguing that they should do that. But I think there are ways that they can try to, and probably need to get serious about, and I don't mean to imply that they're not serious about it, but to get really aggressive about promoting carpooling. There are a lot of students who drive one car to the school. It astounded me 2 weeks ago when we found out that Davis High, with a student body of 2,600 students or so, has 4 buses. And I imagine, my daughter happens to ride one of those, but I imagine those buses are not full. That blows my mind. When I went to Davis, there were at least a dozen buses. And so there is something that's changed over the course of the last several decades where there's more disposable income or whatever it is, more cars are being purchased in each family, and for convenience sake, which I understand fully, kids are allowed to drive by themselves. We see it, at between 7 o'clock and 7:30 every morning on 200 North, the parking lot that is 200 North every morning, as there's students frantically trying to get up to school. I'd love to see Davis High really aggressively pursue how they can encourage greater carpooling. If there are parking areas such as Heritage Park, which is largely unused during the day, where we could designate and help the school designate that, hey, if you guys want to go and park there and then carpool, then you can, and 1 car parking at Davis High to have all that. I understand that would be a pretty radical change for some people's convenience in getting to and from Davis High. But I think convenience is probably not the highest priority from my perspective. There are safety concerns in and around that neighborhood that I think have to be accommodated. The idea of looking at 500 South, the street going up to the DATC, if there's additional ways to park, to accommodate diagonal parking up there, that has 0 impact on a neighborhood.
That's great.
And would produce probably a significant number of parking stalls. I recognize that there would be some cost associated with doing that, but maybe we can work with the school and see what can be worked out there. Anyway, I think that there are some things that could be accommodated. I am personally not necessarily really in favor of just simply giving each resident one designated area in front of their own home, and then letting the students park. I think you'll have to do more than simply painting curb. It probably is going to have some signage there as well, so that during the winter season, those areas can be clearly delineated as well. But again, I'll go back to what I mentioned the last several times we've talked about this. It's going to boil down to we've got to have some strict enforcement that students who are infringing and encroaching on areas that they're not supposed to be parking in, those cars would have to be ticketed and booted and towed. And
TBT, ticketed and towed.
But
like I said,
again, I'd like to see some additional things accommodated before we do too much in the neighborhood. That things that can be accommodate student drivers without having to have a tremendous impact on the neighborhood. Personally,
thank you. Yeah, I had kind of come to similar conclusion, but for a different reason. I mean, first of all, I think this permitting process that I copied from another city clearly has been done, could be done. I'm not convinced it would be that much more expensive than other types of enforcement if you're enforcing it, other than just opening it up or leaving the signs. Having said that, the reason, and I think the cost, I mean, you're still going to, under my fallback position, would still be costs. You'd have the cost of the signs, you'd have the sunk cost, and you'd have some enforcement costs. So it wouldn't be that significantly different, and it's not too complex to enforce. But the reason I probably don't support it is there's very little benefit by the time you get 175 spaces and you're only adding 50 student spaces. And I think the reaction that I got back from some of the parents or student council groups, parent groups, was, well, that doesn't really help us at all. We're not, so why go through all that effort if there's not really that much additional help for the students? I think my position then was, well, if that's the case, let's go to the easiest to enforce. Let's go back to the 10-to-2 signs, which was the staff proposal from the second meeting. And I think that's what I was leaning towards. Interesting idea, Councilmember Lee. I think that's certainly something that could at least be, the idea could at least be enforced in an area around the theater, which I hadn't really, thought of a way to do that, because you wouldn't want to have people who are going to the theater get permits to go there, because even though I go to the theater, I probably don't go there enough to justify getting a permit. And so sort of the idea of painting there could be expanded to that area. I'm not sure about other areas of the city, because almost any area of the city, especially around a school, elementary school, or even just neighbors who are having a party or something, I mean, you can't really control. But these are areas that have frequent, so the areas that we have to be concerned with now, the main one, the big one's around Davis High, so we have to address that issue. I think the only concern that I have with painting, other than the one that's already been raised, could you always see it during the winter, and whether you need other kinds of signage and expense, and would it still be a little bit of an enforcement burden? There's one thing I didn't want to do is encourage students to come out from the parking lot for convenience. And it seems a little bit backwards to me to require a permit for the resident has to now have a permit, but the student doesn't. And if I'm a student and I have a choice, maybe I don't get, and I think I might be able to get a spot in the residential zone, why would I buy a permit? Or maybe if I live on that side, why even bother going to the other side of the school and park in the school parking? And it doesn't really address I guess if you had the same study, the work that Andy's done, it wouldn't be all lost with the painting, because you could, paint in such a way that you're really you're still limiting the number of spaces that students can park, and you're probably going to end up with pretty much the same number if you give every resident their spot. And there's 75 driveways, there's 138 spots, so you're going to have 50 student spots that you're going to paint green. So you could almost make the same argument, well, maybe it's slightly less expensive to enforce than the permit, but you're still going to have colors all over the curb. Some of the residents have kind of suggested to me that they would really prefer not to have colors painted on their curb, and wondered how we would all feel if we had a bunch of paint going down our curbs. And so if that were the case, even though I think, we were both trying to come up with an idea, or several of us were trying to come up with some idea where we could still manage the traffic, whether it's painting or whether it's permitting, the fact of the matter is we don't really get that much benefit from going with a more complex system. So I think, and then keeping in mind some of the arguments that were made early on in the council meetings that, it's really not the responsibility of the city to provide parking for students. That's something, and I love some of the ideas that Mr. Dunford came up with, even maybe using some of the parks where you could have some signage there, and maybe that's phase 2, but you could say, determine how many people would use it, talk to the student council, and if that seems like it's viable, you could have some carpooling sections. That's another idea. And I don't know how viable, how much that would be used. Wouldn't want to do it if it couldn't be used. But I guess that's why I came back to, well, for really marginal benefit, maybe to allowing student parking, maybe we need to really, as a city, cooperate and look for other ways that we can help the school by making that property available along Main Street, by having some designated parking, carpooling areas in the parks, and that sort of thing. But if we're not going to do, if we think it's too complex to do the student thing and we still have all the same problems that the residents are concerned about, but we don't really help the school that much, then why do anything there other than just to put up the 10 to 2 signs during those hours and control the overcrowding and the other problems that way. So I think that's what I would be in favor of, is going back to the 10 to 2 signs.
So just, so what you're saying is no parking between 10 and 2?
Right. And that was the staff proposal from the last meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But that had changed from the previous meeting, right, Andy? I think staff proposals shifted.
The first meeting, we suggested removing all the signs, and then just to help mitigate some of the impacts, maybe doing some painting to make it very clear where it was not appropriate to park.
Yeah, so it shifted. I think anywhere where you can pick up 50 stalls is 50 stalls. If we can pick up 50 here in a friendly manner in the neighborhoods and pick up 50 at the school through, other methods we've talked about, restriping, moving the portables, those kind of things. Every 50 we pick up is beneficial. So, in the wintertime, you could perhaps put up a flag like you put on fire hydrants. Or it could be a general rule of thumb. Students just need to know if you're blocking access, that's an automatic ticket. But there's a happy medium somewhere, for sure.
I know we've been talking about this for some time. And maybe the idea of going back and saying, let's look at one more option. I've not had in-depth conversations, but personally, I really like Councilmember Lee's suggestion. It seems like the neighbors may absolutely like it, they may absolutely hate it, but we're not saying no parking in the neighborhood. And then we're also not saying, we're not saying sorry, only, well, I guess that's the only, we're not saying no parking, we're still providing parking, but we're still protecting areas. And if, if Councilmember Snell's family gatherings really got that bad, then, in a case-by-case situation, we could put some kind of designation to try and help for that. But, I realize it may be up to debate. No matter what, eventually, when the council takes a vote on what to do or what not to do, I don't think anyone's going to be happy. But just as you were saying that, just at least for me, was kind of an aha moment. Like, yeah, that's, and to what Councilmember Adams just said, it may not be 100 and 200 more stalls, and it may not be a perfect situation, but it is something while trying to come up with a compromise. And my idea, now again, I always have to say I don't vote, but I actually think that seemed like a reasonable compromise in my mind.
Well, the thing that I want to point out, and Chris he's right. There has to be enough pain there to incentivize the city to take care of not the city, but the school district to look at other options. And there's a lot that they can do. I mean, everything from carpooling to and sanitizing the kids that rides bikes to walk, to do all kinds of things like that. But, you know, we live in a different world, and I can see, you know, Dave's point of view as well. When I went to school, they didn't have all these curricular activities like they have now, and we have kids coming in and out of Davis High at a lot of different times now. And, but I think that this is probably, I've thought about this for a couple days, and I think it's probably about as good as we're going to get in the aspect that it creates enough pain for the students and doesn't provide them enough parking, so they have to incentivize them to try to figure something out and work from their side, but it gives a certain amount of protection to the people of the area as well, so they don't have their in front of their houses blocked all the time. And I think it'll be easy for the police to enforce as well, which is an important thing. So that's kind of where I stand.
Knowing that it could be changed again, and the council could change their mind, and the idea of tabling it probably makes everybody want to throw up. But it might be beneficial to put on paper what Councilmember Lee's suggestion looks like officially. Like, I gotta tell you, excellent staff report. Even if it's not loved the idea, the detail and the data is superb. Maybe implementing this same kind of thinking to her suggestion, and then talking about it one more time might be worth considering. And again, you don't have to take a motion on that, but
Or we pull the trigger and get her done.
Well, just one more comment, Mayor, if I might.
True.
As I've thought about this, you know, we had this in the original proposal, but I do think that my one concern that if you charge I guess would you just give just details, you know, would you give a permit to residents, or would they have to pay for it, or?
No, you would just give it to them.
You would give them a parking permit.
That's what I'd prefer doing. They're going to have a certain amount of income to offset it by the tickets and different things like that.
Okay, and I don't want to make this ad infinitum, but and maybe they're just little details, but in the past when we had that's what we had before with the signs, and everybody lost their permit, there was no charge for it. Do we get back to that same place where we are now, unenforceable? So that's one question. I sort of answered my other question, though, honestly, that, you know, if you keep to if when you paint, you only have 50 spots, the same number of spots that you would have allowed permitting, I think that does mitigate the concern that you're going to have a lot of students leaving the parking lot for convenience or because they don't have to buy a pass. I mean, they would, you know, so you'd still be limiting the spaces, and if they were in the space that was for the resident without a permit, then they could be ticketed. Mm-hmm. Maybe the other factor is that now we just have signs where if you have painting and you maintain the painting, you can, you know, if the residents do lose a pass and don't get a new one and park there, then, well, you'd get a ticket, right? So that would sort of mitigate that a little bit. So thank you for allowing me to think through it, but I think with that, I could, with those protections, I guess, I could also support that.
Well, I do know in Ogden, they give out the permits for free, and then they turn around. If you lose it, then you have to pay for it. And I think that gives incentive to the people to make sure that they hold on to their...
It can't be like Snow Basin, you don't get one freebie on your season pass.
No way.
One forgiveness. Even Disneyland does that.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about this system is it can work anywhere in the city. If there's another area that we need to deal with, we can use the same system.
Yeah.
Now the downside or the drawback or to taking action on this direction is because we really don't have it spelled out. So if you take action and say, let's do that, let's implement it, we have it. We have an idea. We have it detailed. We have a pretty good idea, but we don't have very clear cut and rule and talking about any unintended consequences. Is it 20 feet? Is it 15? Are there certain driveways that it's going to be? Sorry, it's got to be 16, and now we're that leaves 4 feet left between the two neighbors because we tried to do 20. What do you want to do with that 4 feet? I think it probably would be, and especially if we originally had talked about not trying to do it this school year, but implement the plan this summer. Council, certainly you can do whatever you want, but we really don't have a clear written guidance, at least at this point. And again, downside is giving more direction to go back and come again, but
I think we could move forward.
I've still got crayons in my desk from the coloring this picture.
You can pull out your colored
Go
pencils
try to
again.
fine tune this proposal and bring it back to you in a couple weeks to make sure that's what you were thinking, and
I think I would like to see it
give us time
spelled out.
to think about some of those details and how to deal with them.
And for example, you might use, in certain places, you might use signs, for example, instead of just paint, if that would be helpful.
We'll look at
Yeah.
the ways
Look
to
at
make
the
it
whole thing, yeah.
apparent what the
An
rules
occasional
are.
sign somewhere would probably make sense
says
to.
round curve.
Just put a
permit
occasional
parking
sign.
only.
I would also like to see if there can be some accommodation along 500 South there, if there, what that might look like while we're at it. I mean, I think we'd gain a lot more spaces over there and have zero impact on neighbors.
It could be a breathing document too. If an extenuating circumstance pops up, where, I remember Mr. Dunford talking about his business, his home business. So if there's a valid concern there, perhaps those could be looked at one-on-one. I think that's fair. I'm sure, might take, but I think case by case, someone could come and plead it. I think we could move forward though. Are we willing to make a motion, or are we just, is this going to move on and just think about it more?
Any motion could be made. The sense I was getting is that we were going to direct staff to come back with one more proposal at our next meeting, but
to solidify
we'll recognize any motion
so we're on the
made.
same
Spell it out, yeah.
I'd like to see it spelled out.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Good.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion to table this item and direct staff?
Is there any suffrage going on right now with the students by continually prolonging this?
There doesn't seem to be at this time, just
No,
because the
it's just the
sophomores aren't
same.
getting their licenses yet. We probably have another month or two before the real issue starts to.
Didn't we talk about a summer implementation? I guess that wasn't necessarily finally decided, but I guess that was the other point to that is if we were going to do it in the summer, then doing it now or doing it in 2 weeks with the summer implementation is still a summer implementation.
Kind of,
We couldn't do any curb painting until
yeah,
the
curb
snow
painting
melts
would be a
anyway.
problem right
Yeah.
now, but.
And clean it.
Okay.
About 50.
I'll make a motion that we table it then and
Yeah, I'll
direct
second
staff
it.
to come back and.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Lee as outlined. Any further discussion? Councilmember Page, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Voting is unanimous. Next, thank you, everyone. Next item on our agenda is election agreement with Davis County. Maria. City Recorder Devereaux.
Yeah, she never did
Yes,
speak.
yes, sir. So I went to a meeting at the Davis County Clerk's Auditor's Office, and they are willing to provide administrative and technical services to us for elections, for the 2017 municipal elections. We want that. The county will administer the election. They're sending out the by-mail ballot to all of the active voters. So I think they commented it was 21% that really, really wanted the by-mail. But all the cities, they will be progressing to only by mail. They're trying for this, at least 2019. But anyway, so our estimated cost is $24,925 per election, and that's for both the primary and final. And we just need to adopt the agreement, which is attached.
I just, one quick question. I know they put the dates down of all the elections. They're still only doing it like 21 days, is that right, before the election that they mail out the ballots?
3 weeks. That's
Yeah.
true. Yes.
So that stays the same as well?
That hasn't changed.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, there is an option that we can administer our own, right?
There is, yes, that is an option. I do want to say that.
And that's a great option,
yes,
right, Maria?
Yes, it is, it is. We get so much support from the county, so I'd really like to go forward with that. Do an excellent job. Layton
like to
City is
go-
on board, one of our biggest cities in the state, and I'm hoping we can follow suit.
So you'd like to go forward with the paper election?
No,
do it by
sir.
hand?
No,
Oh,
sir.
I'm sorry, misunderstood.
Anyway, so I would like to, staff recommends adoption of the agreement.
Yeah, just to clarify, that was it's almost $25,000, but it encompasses both a primary and,
No, so actually, that is per election.
it is per, so
it
it's
has-
more like,
It has gone up. It is.
like $50,000
You're right,
to
correct.
combine both.
Yes.
So what we do is discourage people to run, so there won't be a primary? I don't think
That would
we'll
be
do
one way to
that.
do it.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
So do we know what it would cost if we weren't doing mail-in?
I think last year, I think, and I had talked to Dean Story, our finance director, he said approximately $19,000 is what we spent last year. So this is a substantial increase. There were 15 recorders in the room, 15 cities being represented within the Davis County area, and the majority, but a few, were thinking of actually running it, going with the county running the by-mail ballot, so.
Okay, so I'm a little confused on that because I guess it'd be the difference between $19,000 and $24,925, so about $5,000. But didn't we have mail-in ballots administered by the county last election as well?
There were, and they're doing more and more of this, so they're not putting as many polling locations out. We still have our polling location here at Kaysville City, so that hasn't changed for us in our city. They're just really, really encouraging the by-mail voting. For some reason, they do have expenses listed in here, and I don't have it pulled up. But they do have all the expenses and the reason it will cost a little bit more, not quite a bit more.
Okay, so again, I'm just a little wanting to understand what the difference is between last election, because we had I thought this was like a re-up of what we'd already done, like maybe every year we had to redo the agreement, because last election, it was administered by the county, so we must have had an agreement with them, and it was by mail voting.
My understanding, this
So-
is something we do every year.
I think
every year,
I think
okay,
that's
yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Have we ever not gone with the county for,
I think Linda, a few
Yes.
times, sometime, has done that. I don't know much about that.
In the past, we've had our own elections by paper ballot elections, where as results were being hand counted, the school's alarm systems were going to go off, and so as they started counting, to kick everybody out and then transfer the votes here. And then we've had them where the county has done them with election machines. So it's still a county administered, but it wasn't by mail, it was an election machine type of contract. And then last year, it was, last election, it was, municipal election was by mail. I think what also can have a factor in that is if there are any judgeships, for example, that happen to be part of that, then the participation, we pay our prorated share. I don't know what else is coming up this fall. If there happened to be a statewide amendment or proposition or a county-wide amendment or proposition, then the cost would be, as I understand it, adjusted to,
right.
If it is just a municipal election only and that's all that appears on our ballot and nothing else comes up from outside sources, if you will, then we bear the entire cost. And as I understand it, this is a contract, this is what it looks like when we bear the entire cost.
And if you notice, it's the poll worker recruitment and training equipment, supplies, everything that I would love them to handle, and certainly we all would, for efficiency and.
But when you have the county administer it, it's so much more efficient. You know, it's the economies of scale rather than every city doing their own.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. That's far more expensive.
Yeah.
Well,
By far, the highest expense is those mail-in ballots.
Yes.
Is the
The
printing
postage.
and postage, as well as there's even one line item in here that's almost $5,000, which is ballot preparation, and assembling, you know, the.
Well, you know, they had a really good, they told us a story just about accuracy. So, I mean, anytime accuracy is in question, it would be really nice if that didn't just fall on our shoulders. It would, you know, the county is a really good support.
It was one thing when we were deciding between city paper ballots on election day or county machine ballots on election day, and those were a little bit closer in cost. The difference between city paper ballots on election day, now you're comparing between city paper ballots on election day and county mail-in ballots, and that's really why you've got the biggest separation in cost, is because that's your other option. But.
Well, I think the thing we need to look at too is before we went to this mail-in, I mean, the average on a municipal election was between 15 to 20% of the people voted, and the last time we just had our municipal, we were 54%. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think anything that encourages people to come out and participate in the process is well worth it.
Absolutely, makes it easier to do it.
You bet.
And I think it is far more efficient to do it. I would make the motion that we adopt the agreement with Davis County for our municipal elections this year.
I'll second that.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Lee for approval as outlined. Any further discussion? Back to Councilmember Garn. Will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Just wanted to make you sweat a little bit, Maria.
I did, thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is amendment number 1 to the interlocal cooperation agreement for animal services. Mr. Scott.
Mayor and City Council, it's on my understanding last year we signed a 5-year agreement with Davis County to provide animal control services. In that agreement, there is an annual amendment that is necessary where we recertify the fees that are involved for the next year. And if you looked at this agreement, there's 3 fees. There's call fees, wildlife call fees, and capital project fees, and they've broken those out each. And I think the total is $55,299.25. And that's information from the Davis County Animal Services and would be payable by us on a monthly basis.
In monthly installments of
Monthly
that.
installments, right.
I would just add that historically, the agreement and what we've wanted to see between the animal control services and the city wasn't always the best. In the past several years, they've done a great job to give a clear expectation of what we can look at every year, and I think this process they have in place is excellent for less shock.
I don't want to put further pressure on myself, but I've been nominated to be on the advisory committee for this organization, so I'll get to learn a lot more about the animal control services in Davis County. So.
And it's fitting that we're doing this today on Groundhog Day.
Oh, yes. That's funny.
Is there a
roadkill?
How many groundhogs are part of these nuisance animals? All right. Hopefully they haven't nabbed that one yet. Okay. Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the agreement or the
amendment number 1.
Is it an amendment?
Uh-huh.
Number 1 to interlocal cooperation agreement for animal services.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Lee and a second by Councilmember Page for approval of the amendment as outlined. Any further discussion? Thank you. Councilmember Adams, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Voting is unanimous. Next on our agenda is approval of 2 job descriptions in the Kaysville Police Department. We turn the time to Chief Oberg. Yes, so.
Apologize, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to speak on this or not. Saul Oberg, I'm the Kaysville Police Chief. Tonight, I appreciate your time and consideration of modifying 2 job descriptions within the police department. I hope you've all had a chance to look at the job descriptions. One of the job descriptions is essentially updating a title. It was previously described as the captain in the police department. It's essentially the same position, except one consideration when we try to, this has been a position that hasn't been filled for the past couple of years, and then I'm considering filling now with your approval. But one consideration in changing the title and the job description a little bit was when we tried to conduct a salary survey. Many police departments over the course of the past 10 years have gone away from this title and now use different titles, whether it's assistant chief or deputy chief. Probably Salt Lake City maybe 8 years ago went away from all their captains, and that kind of had a trickle-down effect, essentially. That's one of the positions. The other position is a modification from essentially what was a records management type position, a typist and dispatcher position, to one that we've called a support services supervisor, to try to encompass all of the different tasks that are associated with the job description. And many years ago, this was simply a typist position, but as you know, with technology and expectations and all the changes that our world has seen over the course of the past 10 years, it's obviously placed us in a position that we've had to adapt and take on different tasks, and most of those are reflected in this position. And to try to be fair to the employee and fair to me as I try to set expectations and consequences for not following what's in our job descriptions, we needed to update this and modify it. I'm not sure if you have any questions.
Any questions from the council?
Or anything I can clarify.
You are looking to advertise for this opening shortly, is that right?
Yes.
Did I
yes.
hear you say that, or something?
Yes. Yes.
That you're wanting to
Yes.
fill this position?
Yes.
Thank you.
What would be the added cost burden? Will there be added cost burden? I guess I'll word it that way.
The support services supervisor position would come with, I would propose a different pay scale. So long-term, there would be some increases. Short-term, the increase would be very minimal. I haven't figured out exactly what that would be, but likely $1 an hour or something in that arena for the next, until the next budget year. The other position would be a replacement of a sergeant position, and it would come also with some additional cost. And I don't know exactly what that cost would be. It would depend on the candidate that filled that position and their qualifications, experience, education, things like that should be considered in that determination.
In other words, you have a head count opening from someone who is retired from the department that has not been filled.
Yes, correct.
Correct, that you will apply to the assistant chief of police position.
Yes, these would not be additional personnel, additional bodies that we're asking for.
Right.
Do you foresee adding that position back down the road in the next couple of years? Or
Adding, I'm sorry?
Is it the captain position?
This would
just
be
retired.
that. This would be that position.
Right, but then it'll move up to assistant chief, right? So it will move up a rank, right?
Well, it would essentially be that rank as the captain rank was.
I don't know if this helps, but in our conversations, you've mentioned that the sergeant that's retired, he had some responsibilities and also some management responsibilities. Those have been divvied out to other folks, or would be taken on by this position. I don't know if that answers Councilman Adams' question, but
yes, many of those would be filled by this position, and the rest of them that wouldn't be would be distributed amongst the rest of us.
So you wouldn't be coming in 6 months saying, now I need to replace Sergeant?
No,
with the sergeant?
that's not my intent, if that's what you're asking.
That was the question.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, any additional questions, or someone care to make a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the 2 new job descriptions in the police department, and have Chief Ober go ahead and proceed with advancing and filling both.
I'll second that.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Lee. As outlined, any further discussion? Councilmember Adams, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Voting is unanimous.
Thanks, you. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Next on our agenda is appointment of Mayor Pro Tem 2017. Every year, we appoint a Mayor Pro Tem to administer or to take the place of the mayor if the mayor is unavailable or unwilling to perform his or her duties. In 2015, when Councilmember Taylor moved from the city, we appointed Councilmember Lee to fill the rest of 2015 and 2016. So we need to appoint a Mayor Pro Tem for 2017. There isn't necessarily a fixed process that has to be done. Historically, for the most part, we have taken the most senior council member, which is what we did and at that time, and who hasn't had the opportunity yet, and that's when we appointed Councilmember Lee to fill that position. The 3 of you that were elected at the same time, there's really not necessarily a senior among you. Councilmember Snell has been here for a few months longer typically, and the way we kind of have you all seated up here, I've kind of taken votes and so it kind of considered the order of votes as seniority. But with that, I would recommend Councilmember Snell would be next in that same process that we have followed in years past, and would make a motion, or would recommend appointment of Councilmember Chris Snell to be Mayor Pro Tem for the year 2017. That's my nomination at least, so.
Do we need to make a motion?
Someone does, yeah. I started making a motion and remembered that I can't, so.
That's probably smart that you didn't.
I kind of started trying to change my wording mid-sentence, but, and I'll just say for the most part, there's really not a whole lot to do. That being said, I did lean on Councilmember Lee a lot to fill in for me for a lot of different events throughout the year, and she has been phenomenal to do that. And then if I have to step out or not here, she's done a fantastic job. So thank you. I think when I recommend you the first time, I said you probably won't have to do anything, and then she's probably thinking, well, that wasn't the case because she did a lot. So thank you.
You did a great job.
You're welcome.
So would someone like to make the motion that I started to make?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to recommend Councilmember Snell as Mayor Pro Tem for the year 2017.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Garn and a second by Councilmember Page. Any further discussion? Councilmember Lee, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Next on our agenda is councilman reports. This is the time in our city council meeting when we provide some time to the city council to give us an update on their departments or other happenings in the city. Does anybody have a council member report they would like to share?
Yeah, I'll just mention briefly that we had Local Officials Day. I can't remember the day, January something.
It's a Wednesday.
20. Thank you. But that went very well. Again, we only had 3 youth city council members there this time, but I was very grateful to have them there. And in fact, they weren't even assigned, just to show you the stock that Kaysville kids come from. They weren't even assigned in the debate, and yet one of our youth city council members still stood up and asked questions in the mock debate after reading it. So that was really neat. And you know, I think we have another event. I need to get with Council Member Snell. We've got another event coming up soon that we could probably also invite the youth court members. And just one more thought too, I was reading around a little bit because I'm frankly think I need to do more with the Youth City Council than we have been doing, and we need to get together for a meeting schedule. They've been a little bit hard to get a hold of, but I think it would be really neat if we had a sort of a structure to it. So we maybe had a chair or a mayor of the Youth City Council, and then, you know, the members, and we could have, you know, more members than 5 or whatever if more were interested. But then have them get a little more involved, maybe on a quarterly basis, where they could come and shadow us during a meeting and sort of study the issues and be assigned to a council member or something and talk with us about the issues the week before or when we get our packets, and just kind of involve that in addition to the service projects and the city events that they do. So,
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to mention about that as well, that it's great to have our mayor being the president of the league, and he has the clout. Our girls got to go up there and have the picture with the governor and shake his hand, and that was pretty special for him. And there wasn't too many of them that had that opportunity, so that was neat.
That was really nice. I just wanted to make mention that on February 7th, which is the first Tuesday, we will be holding our first Power Commission meeting, and it will be at 7, and it will be held here. So for those who want to come and listen in and participate, you're welcome to.
And what was that date again?
It's the first Tuesday of every month as needed, but that would be the 7th.
Excellent. Thank you. I just have 2 quick things to mention. It seems that one of our officers who does all of our officers do a phenomenal job. One of our officers, despite her best efforts, cannot seem to get away from the spotlight, even if she wanted to. She was recently recognized on Martin Luther King Jr. Day by the NAACP as an outstanding officer. We were able to attend that luncheon as they recognized her. At that luncheon, Don Hudson from Channel 4 stopped by and talked with Chief Oberg, and she was highlighted as a behind-the-badge officer who goes above and beyond the call of duty. This last Friday evening, we have the video that we'll embed on our Facebook page so that you all can see that. I'm not sure that we actually got that posted, but and as you know, she was recognized by accident when she was out helping people plow their driveways or shovel their driveways. She started with one, and then went to another one, and then went to another one, and as I understand it, the one that she was caught shoveling for was the 12th driveway she did that day. She wasn't neglecting her responsibilities, but started with an elderly person, a couple of kids that were out shoveling their driveways. She stopped and helped them, and I think it's a great example. So she was highlighted on Channel 4 recently as well. Now it's been Channel 4 and KSL and Channel 13. Just missing Channel 2, so I guess we'll have to figure out how that'll kind of fun that that's all just kind of happened on its own. The second thing I just wanted to mention, I had somebody ask me recently about rules in our city council meeting, what the rules of order are. And the rules of order in our city council meeting are posted on the city website. But in 2011, new legislation was put in place to say that cities need to adopt rules of order. And sometimes the way that we do our meetings, we get some varying feedback to say, hey, I've seen it done in this city and they do it this way, and I've seen it done in this city and they do it this way, and I've seen it done in this city and they would never allow that. Rewinding to 2011, when that was passed and the city council adopted rules of order for their meeting, the city manager at the time did some research for us and really gave us 3 options. One being very strict, more like Robert's rules, if you will, one that was kind of a middle hybrid, and then one that was much more lax, that allowed for more free-flowing discussion and conversation. At the time of those 3 options, the council elected the more free-flowing, lax rules of order, if you will, were adopted at that time. I had someone ask, is that something you should consider revisiting again? And I'm happy to do that. I was going to say, as I look back at that, 2011 date. I'm the only one on the council that was there when those rules were adopted. And so it might be, am I thinking of that right? Everybody else was here in 2011? It might be something, at least we could bring back those three options and see if the council would like to revisit that. So that may be something we bring on an additional, on an agenda, at least to get your feedback. And if you're fine with the way, with the rules as we have them outlined, then great. If you'd like to look at adopting one of the other two or something in between, we can consider that as well. I just wanted to give that update to the question I received. Any other council member reports?
Mayor, I just wanted to mention that someone mentioned in the call to the public tonight about their concerns. I think it was Mr. Johnson. I don't know if he's still here, but there was a question about the intersection at 200 North and Angel. And that's obviously, there's a lot of news to discuss about that particular intersection. I think he was hoping, or was inviting anyway, to have some kind of a, I don't know, meeting with neighbors down in the area, vicinity of that intersection, to try to get them, to make sure that there's no, we clarify the rumors and make sure that it's clear what the plan is for that intersection. You know, I'm happy to avail myself to have such a meeting. I'm not sure if we need to do that, or we can, you know, do a discussion, or maybe post on the website or on the city's Facebook page a clear proposal of what that intersection. There's actually detailed drawings now of that intersection, which will be completed, I believe, in this calendar year.
It will be, and hopefully, in a perfect situation, we go to bid very soon. But Mr. Johnson's point is well taken. We've balanced the need to, and our community development hates it when I use the word fast track, but essentially fast track a project because of the timing for the school year. That said, I appreciate his suggestion. We don't want to just move forward without any opportunity for feedback. Our official council member liaison for transportation and UDOT and such is Councilmember Garn. I think it would make sense to either include him or have him help take the lead, and if another one of you would like to coordinate with staff to do that, I think that would be very very helpful to ensure that we get appropriate feedback. Now, we can take as long as you want for that feedback opportunity. The drawback is if we hold a series of open houses or something like that and then go back and study longer, we'll miss our opportunity to get it done this season. So it does become but that being said, we've got to make sure people are very clear on what it is we're doing, and that we don't miss a real common sense suggestion that, gee, if we would have just asked, we could have done that while we were building it. So I think that's a great suggestion, and would recommend Councilmember Garn, if you don't have any objections, since that falls under your area, then maybe take the lead on making that happen with staff and whoever you'd like on the council.
Thank you. Just one question on that. I guess if maybe I missed it, but has there been a final? They were going to take a look at, how they were going to structure the intersection, and then I don't think there's been a report yet. And I'm wondering if it might be appropriate to, and I can find out too, I have some emails from people who were interested in Case Creek at that time, so I could get together them, email, and I'm sure they could get a group together. But I'm thinking maybe it'd be good to schedule that meeting with the neighbors after we had a proposal that they could actually look at.
I think we're at 60% design right now, so it's getting there.
I agree.
And I believe also that any property owner that would be directly impacted has been contacted and notified, and those discussions have taken place. So
that's great.
The indirect impacts are probably
right, because as a neighbor, if I were to go to something, or even as a city council member, if I were to go into something without a proposal and have to I might have a few ideas, I might not, but it's a lot easier to come up with ideas if you have a base proposal to sort of evaluate, so then we could present that to them. So as soon as that's ready, but I'll do a little bit of groundwork and let them know that we'd like to contact this group and let them know we'd like to, they're my neighbors, but talk to them and see that there will be a meeting coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member reports?
last meeting, there was the letter of admonishment that was admitted into the packet. Could I get some clarity on that? Is the packet pre-council? Should the letter technically go into the minutes? Because it wasn't presented, it wasn't in the packet, it wasn't.
It wasn't, so it wasn't in the packet initially. I didn't see that letter initially, and neither did nobody else did. And then what we do is afterward, we distribute the packet within a 3-day time frame. We post it on the public notice website, and I also posted the packet, the public handout, anything handed out in the meeting within 3 days after the meeting. So that's what I did. I added the letter to the packet. Maybe I should have been a little more clear and added that separately as a public handout or something. But I can do either way. But that was not handed out and put in there until after the meeting. Does that make sense?
When someone brings us pictures or they say, can I present this to the council, is that your standard
And those are like
practice?
after the fact, and I'm not able to get that together ahead of time, so that's put in there after the meeting. I send that out in a public notice, and I add it to the website. It's what I try to do.
Have we received any resolution on that? I think there's a lot of upset in the community. There's a letter from Attorney David Church. You know, I think I've been marred pretty badly. I actually would like to testify that I have. I'd like to testify on the record that I felt a lot of discrimination from this council, and I've even through grandma requested emails. You know, it's easy to smear one who is open and vocal and then tries to be himself in all things in all places. But how many of us have similar circumstances in our email content? I think we need to bring fairness and ethics to that. And I'd like, if it's possible, I think we should read David Church's letter. It's created quite an uproar in the community. I think the citizens deserve to know what they just spent their tax dollars on. I think they deserve to know the attorney's response. And furthermore, due to rules that we seemed to put in place last year, I would like to express that Councilmember Garn and Councilmember Page bear the financial burden of David Church's cost, because his letter doesn't validate any of the claims. And I think that was a cost to the city that was undue. And I think there's societal costs, and I testify there are costs to me and my life and my ability to provide for my family, and I want that on the record. And I want it on the record that a gentleman said earlier that it's time for this to cease. I don't know what this is all about in the community, but I'd like to read that letter. I leave it in your hands, Mayor. I think it's their property, that they paid for it, unless Jake and, well, I don't even know if they paid for it, it'd be their property. But I mean, I think there are quite a few things that I feel are fabricated, and quite a few things that I've gone and interviewed the members of staff, that some of the content was derived from in the letter, and the staff has told me one-on-one they're in conflict with what was said in the letter. I'm wondering, is there a plan in place to correct some of that, or are we just letting it go, and that admonishment letter will smear my name and my family's name yet again? And is that the intent, or is this council going to take the responsibility to correct it?
Thank you. As was indicated in our last meeting, I did reach out to David Church and ask him for a feedback of how to handle this particular issue. I had the hesitation of summarizing I did not place it back on the agenda based on his advice. That being said, as you heard the city recorder just mention a moment ago, I don't have a copy to hand out, but I have no problem, unless there's any issue with the council, I have no problem sharing, asking Maria to include in our public handout the response from Mr. Church.
And that would be an official channel, right, Mayor, to release that? That'd be a proper way to do it?
I don't have it to introduce, but I guess I would do a virtual introduction, if you will. The council has received it, has received a copy of it, and so I would just say we will introduce that as a handout, and as official, yes, as the city recorder includes it as a handout, it would be posted as a part of the amended portion of the packet and as a public handout. I personally think that it's just fine to release that letter unless the council feels otherwise.
With that sentiment, could I have your blessing to read number 4?
I wouldn't feel comfortable personally reading portions of the letter, rather releasing it in its entirety. I think would probably make the most sense. I know that I know that at times that I'm trying to say this right way. There's oftentimes people are quick to be skeptical or critical of partial releases. I'm totally think it's a great idea to release the entire thing, but I think it should be done in its entirety, which we can do immediately if we'd like. I know that Maria does it within 3 days, but I'm sure we could figure out a way to post it right away.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, work?
But yeah, I find the letter to be highly beneficial and of David Church's caliber. You know, I think it has a lot of merit to it and maybe help bring a lot of understanding.
Maria, how soon could you post that letter?
Tonight, tomorrow, whatever you'd like. Tonight, tomorrow, whatever you'd like.
Why don't we, if you have the time, and maybe we'll wrap up here and you can get done sooner than you thought, but maybe if you could post it tonight would be appreciated. I would.
When would be the appropriate time to discuss who's going to pay David Church?
Probably not now. If you want to petition an agenda item on that, as typical with many legal services, this is one that I requested, as I mentioned in the last meeting.
And I'm not, I think you did the right thing, you know, but I think the cause that led us to have to go and incur, I think David's around $250 an hour. It's an extensive letter.
Officially, we have not received an invoice yet. I've asked for one. He has not provided one, so I don't know what that cost is. But I would say probably tonight is not the time for the discussion. But if two of you would like to request that discussion be on an agenda, I would certainly place it. And let me just clarify that too. The agenda is set by the mayor. We've always used it as a rule, sort of, that if two council members want something on the agenda, we put it on the agenda. The law, as I understand it, is two council members can call a meeting for any purpose. So we've adopted the rule that if two council members want something on the agenda, they can put it on the agenda, because if they asked for it to be on the agenda and I said, no, absolutely not, well, then they could just call a meeting at 6:45. Two of them could call a meeting for any purpose. So it seems, so that it doesn't say two council members could put something on the agenda, but we've kind of followed that rule, because if we said, no, we won't do it, then two council members could call a meeting at 6:55 for any certain purpose, and that meeting would need to take place. So I would just say that if two of you would like to do that, please email me the request, and we'd be happy to accommodate.
And I guess just the reasoning would be that if, you know, I've seen it stated that I'm going to be continually scrutinized, not by any citizenry, but I've heard that I'll be continually scrutinized by members up here on the council for every little thing I do. And I just think by way of not setting a precedent, that if every time we have to go to David Church over, perhaps an internal affair email, I think that could get pretty extensive, and I think we all ought to know that, the burden of the attorney's fees will be borne by the accuser if they turn out to be irrelevant or false or slander or things of that nature, that the cost will be borne by the accuser. And I don't know how the council feels about that. I will revert back to last year. There was a scenario where that was borne down on me. I just think in all due fairness, that might perhaps be a good idea.
If that's an agenda item the council would like to discuss, I'd be happy to add that as well.
Thanks for the direction.
All right, any other council member reports? Next item we have is approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes dated January 19th, 2017.
I wanted to make one brief, or point out one brief change that I think should be made. I had taken my daughter back up to Logan 2 weeks ago and was late getting back to the meeting. I actually got to the meeting almost at the tail end of the call to the public. The minutes actually include me voting for the Power Commission appointments on the first page.
I'll change that.
So if you can just strike that part, I was not present for that. Other than that, having read the minutes, I would make a motion to approve them with that change.
Give me 1 second if you don't mind.
Let me just recognize the motion. Do we have a second to the motion? And then we can have an amended motion if needed. Or the motion can die for the lack of a second, and then we can wait and hear. Hearing no,
Yeah.
hearing no second.
Second.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean.
All right, we have a motion for
It's
approval of
good
the
to
minutes
me.
in a second. Further discussion? Do you have something to add?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind. I'll wait till Maria's caught up, not to overwhelm her.
Go ahead.
No rush.
Correct.
In the council discussion and action of possible code of conduct, it states in the first sentence, Councilmember Garn distributed a letter to the city council staff and those in attendance. I think the letter was prompted to be distributed by Councilmember Adams.
I did correct that. It was my very
Oh,
last
am I
version.
looking at an old copy?
You are. I'm so sorry. And it does say distributed to staff. So if that does need to change, I can certainly change that.
But just distributed by who? You changed it to Adams instead of Garn? Right? I don't know. This is up to the council, but.
Okay, no, and I can do that. I can take
Which
another
page
look
are you
at it,
looking
and
at?
I'll do what's correct. You bet.
It's in the end there, Chris. Council discussion and action of possible code of conduct.
Is there a page number at the top? It says like 7 draft or
6. Sorry, fellows. It was in the crease in my staple there. Yeah.
I actually had the same correction to make. So
So would you like to amend your motion, or is there any other suggestions, or is that?
I'm not. All I see is that it says Councilmember Garn distributed a letter to the city council at the beginning of that. And I did just sync it. I think that may be a more recent version.
Yeah.
But was it? If you want to take a look at what I've got here, if it's different than what you've got.
So just why it changed,
Maybe it
I
is.
called Maria at about 5 today and just said, I didn't distribute to staff and those in attendance. And Maria said, okay, I'll just drop that sentence. But if Councilmember Adams would like to make an amendment that he distributed to staff and those in attendance, then that would be fine with me.
Was it not you that did that?
No, I gave it to the.
Okay.
So I
To
gave it to the
staff,
city
right?
council.
Right.
Dean made the copies at Councilman
Yeah,
Adams'
so,
request.
so far we've got, on the very latest, it's Councilmember Garden distributed the letter to the city council. Does everybody think that?
That's what I have.
That's accurate. It's
That is
also
accurate.
Also accurate that Councilmember Adams distributed it
Yeah,
to-
yeah, because this one says city council staff and those in attendance.
Okay,
So you're
sorry,
correct on the-
updated copy.
If you, yeah,
So
the
sorry.
council portion, then
Is that okay?
that's,
If you want to add, though, you can, if you'd rather add a second sentence to that to say.
we have the video, but if you'd like, you can add a sentence that Councilmember Adams requested that it be distributed to all members of the audience. That's fine.
And I'm fine either way.
So that can be done by a substitute motion by one of you, or you can amend your original
I
motion.
will amend my motion to approve the minutes with those two changes.
And I'll second it again.
Thank you. So a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the amendments as outlined. Any further discussion?
I guess it says Councilmember Garn noted that the intent was not for formal action, but for discussion. It's confusing to me on that note why the agenda item said action for possible code of conduct. But then it says over here, it was, the intent was not for formal action. Was it just, could I get some understanding what the intent was? Was it just to get that aired out in the public? Because as it's been stated earlier tonight and a couple times, there's no, I don't think there's anyone up here that doesn't know that it's been a pretty big frenzy in the city over the last 2 weeks, and I think there's been, quite a bit of disrupt to the city over it. And, I think David Church's letter will help cut through a lot of that. But what was the intent? I don't understand. The agenda item says action, and then it says it's not for formal action. So were we just bringing that forward? I hate to say this as a smear campaign, because like I said, I've gone to the sources of the letter, and they disagree with how they're being represented, some of them.
Let me just maybe speak. I can't speak for Councilmember Garn and I think and Paige. I think the minutes reflect what they said in the meeting. How the agenda item was worded: council discussion and action of possible code of conduct violation, is probably more my error than theirs. And what I mean by that, again, new item, new issue, not dealt with before. We worded it, or as I talked with Shane, worded it at that point. No handouts. No, I didn't have something to officially include. And so the action, I can only take what they said. But the wording of such was my doing, but not candidly not intentional. And if I could have done it again, I probably would have said council discussion of possible, and then gathered information, then possibly put it on a future agenda. But
okay. In the spirit of closure, is there going to be closure on that item, or was that letter just permanently out there as, because it's on the city website? Is the city representing that as truth? Or are we going to take what David Church says and amend the letter, or are we going to do due process on the letter? What would you think there?
From my point of view, based on David Church's letter, I do not plan to put this back on the agenda. But as I mentioned in my email to the council, two of you could certainly call a special meeting to do so. But based on his feedback and recommendation, I don't plan to.
So could I ask a follow-up to that? Does that mean that the letter of admonishment will forever stay in the packet, and in years to come, folks will read that and think that's exactly what happened? Is there going to be an opportunity for rebuttal, and it doesn't have to be on an agenda item? I've since learned, actually from David Church himself, this is knowledge to me, that the doors can be closed for a council member. So discovery can be done and things of that nature, and perhaps violations of others can be discussed, in a spirit of fairness. So I feel honestly it's a detriment to me, yet again. I feel like there's been multiple of those, and I would like some sort of to be rectified.
If you would like to provide to the council as a handout in our next meeting that you present to the council, we may not consider or discuss it, but it would then be a handout that I would be happy to accept that would then also be posted as I guess, as a form of, I don't want to counsel you what a rebuttal would be, but that would be an option.
It's very kind of you to offer, but, so if the council doesn't accept it, then we just have to accept that that admonishment letter is going to stay in the packet indefinitely with no chance for a rebuttal. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think you do.
Yeah, I think I understand. I can't speak if the council would overrule something that you would provide, but pretty much it sounds like, and candidly, it's not something I was even aware of that we added them after the fact, but it sounds like anything that anyone presents us, we include as a follow-up, at least since Maria has been here. And I have yet to reject something that someone provides us, and I wouldn't anticipate doing that as well.
Just a quick note that our requirement is to post it to the public notice website. It's just part of transparency that we put it on the city website.
Okay.
The admonishment letter, is that what you're talking about?
So we're still on minutes, and we have a amended motion and a second to approve the minutes as outlined. And so I'm going to call for a vote on the approval of minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So the voting is unanimous.
So the admonishment's going to go into the minutes, or it's going to stay in the packet? Sorry, point of clarity.
The previous letter is, the minutes are minutes, and in their current form worded remain exactly as you saw them. The packet was amended to include, according to the city recorder, include the letter, and the public handout portion of the state transparency website will include that letter, as would any handout that's provided to the council in any past or future meeting. So the minutes won't have the minutes, as you search minutes, will not have the minutes with a PDF attachment or anything like that. The minutes are exactly as you read them on these pages, but will not have an attachment to them.
Okay, my vote's aye on the minutes, then if that's unacceptable to change that.
Okay, we'll re-recognize the vote as unanimous. Next item is calendar. We have before you a 3-month calendar. I think the main things, sorry, I just can't scroll that fast. Well, thank you. Valentine's Day, that's the first thing that just popped in my head. It happens to be my wedding anniversary, so maybe that's why my mind went to that. My eyes went to that first.
The daddy-daughter.
Daddy-daughter dance coming up on the 3rd and 4th. And then...
And if we can get the Power Commission, Maria, if we can get the Power Commission meeting added to the calendar from now on.
I'll do that backwards. Is that once a month, I'm sorry?
Yeah, once a month, first Tuesday at 7.
Thank you. The next item on, that's pretty much all I see that maybe to point out for this year. The next item on our agenda is adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Susan, Mayor, is that council meeting going to be?